Hello and welcome to Rewind Reviews, a podcast where we take a look at movies from the past and ask the age-old question of, is that any good? We are entering the holiday season. Merry Christmas, happy holidays, whatever suits you. We're doing Home Alone. This is Chris' choice. This was a Chris choice. But I felt like, I'll be honest with you, Chris, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, this felt like a slightly reluctant choice, in that I don't think either you or I have like a massive affinity for this film. But you knew at some point we kind of had to cover it. And since we've kind of accidentally created a theme for this series of Rewind Reviews of kind of classic Rewind Review fodder, you sort of were like, this is like the most logical choice, and I agree with that. But is my assessment correct that like this wouldn't be your first choice of a film to be covering in this situation?
I think I probably always would have chose it in a way, but partly because I'm slightly, through a personal experience, have a real question mark over this film of does it hold up?
Right.
Excuse me. I haven't even mentioned that I've got a slight cold because last time I had a cold and a bit of a cough, Dan revealed he had to edit out like 120 coughs. So I'm like, if I don't even acknowledge it, hopefully I won't cough so much that Dan has to edit it out. Mm-hmm. But obviously, apologies if there are coughs. Apologies, future Dan. If there aren't coughs.
I think I remember rightly, as a joke, I sent Chris a screenshot of the timeline with all of the like the visible edit points where I took the coughs out. Is that right? Am I remembering that right?
I think so, and I think it was triple figures.
It was a lot, anyway. But it was fine. It is what it is. It's not a problem. The only downside is I have to listen to the podcast, which I refuse to, generally speaking.
Well, hopefully it won't be an issue, but apologies, like I say, to either the viewers if there are coughs or future Dan if there aren't. Hopefully there won't be, and it will just be because I can keep it in. Okay, so let me say the history with the film. So I watched the film at a young age, but also at an age where, like, or by cultural osmosis, I was aware of Home Alone and knew it as the, defend the house movie. Mm-hmm. And I quite literally watched it for the first time at Christmas. It was one of those things where we had family round, and the telly was, which is so rare, like looking back, for my family to have had the telly on when people were round. But I think it was kind of the lull in the evening, like no one really saying much, so put the telly on in the background, but still talk. But then there's something there if people get distracted. But there were three kids in the room, 2 younger than me. Well, I suppose 4. My sister would have been there. And I find my eyes wandering to this movie, and it feels quite, my memory of it is it feeling really quite slow. It feeling like a bit of a slog. And then obviously it kicks into gear, and that lasts like literally half an hour. It is like me as a kid thinking, oh, this is what I thought the movie was. Like, okay, this is cool, this is exciting, and feeling like it had been worth the slow build for what then unfolded. And must have watched it a couple, like I remember really, I for some reason, and I think you and I share this in common, the Home Alone film I have most connection with, as in from my childhood, is Home Alone 3.
Yes,
I remember
same with me.
Having that film on VHS and absolutely loving it. I feel like in my memory, and I'd almost be scared to check, I feel like more of the movie is the planning. Like, it blew my mind how quickly this film jumps from I'm gonna defend the house to the plan is unfolding. Like, it's like minutes, if not seconds, of like him drawing a battle plan and da-da-da. I seem to remember that unfolding a bit longer in Home Alone 3, but I couldn't say for sure. That might be my childhood memory. Mm-hmm. But I had Home Alone 3 on video. I really kind of watched that film a lot. And because of, I think, Home Alone 3 and my love for that, and saying to people, oh no, Home Alone 3 is good, I've watched the movies quite a bit. I think as an adult, I would say I think I would have always said I'd need to rewatch with a critical eye to say if this was true. But I think I've always said I prefer the second to the first. Yeah. So, but ultimately, always saw it as a classic. And then a few years ago, we were here in this house, so. Well, I couldn't tell you if it was pre or post lockdown. My inkling would be pre, so therefore it's got to be like 4 years ago, maybe.
Like 2019, 2018.
We're doing. You're sorry.
So what, Christmas 2019? I'm guessing then.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I think so. I think the Christmas before COVID would make sense.
Yeah.
So we had friends around and we were watching Christmas movies, and my pick was Jingle All the Way. Obviously, I can't remember what someone else's pick was, but we watched Home Alone, and there was a friend in the room that had never seen Home Alone before, and I think had the experience I had as a kid, and we're watching it, and he's just like, it starts to get a bit awkward, and it starts to get a bit, nothing much is really happening, or it doesn't seem that funny, does it? And what's the issues here? And watching it with a more critical eye, I have a firmer opinion on what the issues might be. And I have to say, I didn't experience that. I didn't experience, is this as strong a sense of, if this is good? I actually felt a lot of nostalgia and a lot of kind of a lot of comfort in a way, actually. So. Yeah, that's sort of that's why I picked it in a way, because it does feel like a kind of classic Rewind Reviews choice. But also I'd literally had an experience of an adult watching it for the first time and kind of going, this is a classic? Like, I don't really understand why. And I think my headline thought, and I'm obviously fascinated to get your thoughts on why, my headline thoughts on that are, I think the movie, when you watch it from a critical perspective as an adult, the movie actually does a much better job of making you understand the logistics of why this has happened.
Yes.
Over the emotions of why this has happened. Mm-hmm. The movie wants you to feel this great sense of reunion at the end, and this great sense of this mum's quest. And in the beginning of the movie, they are so unbelievably monstrous to this kid.
Yes.
And the notion that one of a family that big wouldn't go, wait, hold on, where is Kevin? The notion that the mum wouldn't wake up, and regardless of being late for the flight, her thought wouldn't be, I left things in a really bad place with my son last night. I should immediately check on him and give him a hug. Given what the movie then wants you to believe about her journey for the rest of the film, I think creates a slight disconnect. I think, but I'm willing to be spun round from that if you think it's something different. Like, I'm not so firm on my convictions on it, but that is kind of the nearest conclusion I could come to of why watching it as an adult, you sort of go, And it is also a movie of kind of 3 parts. It really feels, and each part feels very different one to the other. The first is a psychological horror about a child and how they're treated by their entire family. The second is a child's left alone series of sketches, and then the third is the movie everyone thinks the whole movie is, which is the defending the house with traps. But sorry, I've gone into thoughts. Give me your personal experience of the film.
Yeah, so similar, I think. This was one of those movies. So I think there's a reason. For anyone wondering, Home Alone 3, really? You and Chris both have an affinity with Home Alone 3? You have to think about our ages. So I was born in 87. So this movie comes out in 1990. I'm going to say, too young to see this in a cinema. The sequel comes out in 1992. I am also too young, really, to see this in a cinema. Toddler I would have been. So both the original Home Alone movies were TV movies for me as a kid growing up. I don't remember the first time I saw Home Alone, but it was kind of always there because it played every Christmas. So at a certain point, I saw it on television, enjoyed it well enough, like everyone else. But I distinctly remember even having conversations with my sister, like where it's like, put Home Alone on, but we'll just skip to the good bit. And we would literally watch the third act. And that's how we sort of thought of the movie. The second one may be a little bit more mixed. I think they did a better job maybe of balancing the Kevin McAllister chaos. Because I distinctly remember the second act has the sequence with the bricks, which we'll come to, I guess, one day we'll review that movie. But that's like second act, like maybe end of the first act. That's early-ish in the movie. It's like half an hour, 40 minutes in. So like that movie has more of the stuff you think of with Home Alone spread across it. So that was how, but I had no affinity for it. And then years later, the third one comes out. 1998, I think the third one comes out. By that point, I'm 11 and I am prime age to enjoy and love that movie. And I really do. And I'm terrified to rewatch it. Absolutely terrified. I'm so like, because I'm in the Home Alone headspace after having watched and done some research on this movie today. I was like, should I just put the third one on at some point and just watch that? And I'm like, no, I really should save that experience for when we cover it in a year or two on here. Like that's a thing we're going to have to do at some point. And I'm excited to find out what the outcome of that is, if it holds up or not. But I don't want to know ahead.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
And I don't think we could have done this one at any other time other than Christmas. But as far as I'm concerned, 2 and 3 are fair game any time of the year.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. I don't remember that Christmas being much a part of the third one. I think it is a little bit of a part of the second one, because isn't he defending a toy store at Christmas?
Yeah. I think the second one is also set at Christmas time and maybe even Christmas Eve. The third, I remember it snowing, so I think it's around Christmas, but it's not
deliberately
to my memory.
Gotcha.
Because it's not even wise, because everyone else is still at school. He's sick, so
yeah, that's right. So it's winter, but not Christmas. So maybe what we do then is maybe next year, the second of the 2 Christmas movies we do is Home Alone 2, and then we follow that up with Home Alone 3. Maybe that's what we do next winter. Because then that's it's in the winter, but it's not at Christmas, if that makes sense. We'll figure it out. I don't know. Yeah. But either way, I'm excited to get to that because, excited and nervous because my concern is that I'm going to discover it's a bad movie, and I don't want to know that. I hope that's not true. But in terms of my rewatch this time, I feel a similar way. I mean, I'll put it this way. I mean, I'll lay it out right now. The sequence that people think of this movie as, which is the defend the house sequence as Chris described it, which sort of takes up a lot of the third act. Actually, let me see. We'll play a guessing game. I doubt you double-checked, Chris. You might have double-checked, but if you didn't, I hope you didn't, because it'd be fun to have a little guessing game, Chris. The movie is, let me see, how many minutes long? Where is it? The movie's 103 minutes long, Chris. How many of those minutes exist between the bell chiming to mark Harry and Marv showing up and Harry and Marv being carted away by the police? How many minutes elapse between the start of the invading the house sequence and the police catching the two men? If you were guessing.
Well, I think I did pause near the start of it, so I think it's about 26, 28 minutes.
Would you be surprised to learn it's 14 minutes, Chris?
No, I'm not surprised to learn that. No.
When it happens, we're an hour and 16 minutes into the movie, and there are only 22 minutes left of the movie. That's when the bell chimes to mark them arriving. So yeah, I have some similar issues to the ones you brought up. I think I don't want to conflate two concerns though, and I think you've got two very valid feelings, but I'd be worried about putting them next to each other because I worry one might muddle the other. There is a question of believability of leaving Kevin behind, and then there's the question of, am I emotionally invested in this mother's quest to come back to her son when both she and the rest of the family treated him like absolute garbage in the first 20 minutes of the movie? And I think those are two separate issues. I do genuinely think they do as good a job as you could possibly do to convince me it's possible to leave a child behind. They do an awful lot of work specifically to try and make that believable, including the waking up late, the missed head count, the passport and ticket being accidentally binned the night before so they don't realise at the airport that they're missing a head, the number of people that are in their party, the fact it's split across 2 cars, the fact the parents and the kids are separated on the plane too, so they're not even with the kids. So she could easily think he's in the other taxi on the way to the airport, and she could easily think he's happily in the back of the plane during the plane journey. So I think the movie does an extraordinary amount to make that believable, as believable as it can be.
I think it does. I think it does logistically, like the head count thing with the kid from next door.
Yes,
you kind of if you're being like a nitpicky structural wanker, you've got a character that exists. And in his scene takes up a fair amount of screen time just to do that.
Yeah.
But
to be fair, they make the scene funny. So you kind of like, even though the character exists purely in that scene and then vanishes from the movie afterwards, it's a funny enough scene that you don't mind it.
Yeah, I think the power going down, the rush, the head count, the passport thing, like all the things you've just named. I think logistically, it's all very, very clever. I do struggle to buy that emotionally someone isn't like realizing, and that the mum in particular isn't going, "Oh, I need to grab Kevin and just be like, sorry about last night."
Do you not think
like,
the
sorry
waking
that
up...
sorry that we all blamed you? Even though Buzz has, even though this child looks more like every 80s villain you've ever seen in your life. So you'd think, really? And presumably, the child that keeps the tarantula. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Sid from Toy Story.
Maybe pointing fingers at him. Huh?
Sid from Toy Story.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. But yeah, no, I'm with you. Look, I think it's fair to separate the two out.
But I think that the reason I think they get away with the emotional one is because, for me, I don't care what I'm feeling emotionally from the night before. If I wake up and I have 45 minutes to get to an airport and get on a fucking plane with that many people and bags, I'm not taking a second to think about fucking anything other than let's desperately get on this plane, because planes are expensive, man. And like, that's not a lot of time. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, I think they do enough to distract her with that choice, because I think if you take that out, then you go, yeah, you got up, you wandered around, you didn't wonder where Kevin was. That choice is how they get away with it for me, because it is literally, we've got 45 minutes to get all of these people organized with their bags in cars to an airport through security and onto a plane, which seems just outright impossible. Like, so I don't, and I like that in the end, it's not like she goes back there and sees that Kevin is gone. She realizes without any information. Like, it's not like it's like she's noticed the whole time without noticing, if that makes sense. But the chaos of the moment took her through, because she yells out, "Kevin!" on the plane with no facts. Like mother's intuition, I guess. I don't know. And I think, so in terms of the practicalities of it, I think they get away with that too. For me, just for me. Because again, I don't know about you, but whatever my emotional state is, if I was waking up in that situation with that amount of time and stress to get something done, yeah, my emotions are very much being suppressed until I've sat down and taken a minute to breathe. And the minute she does get a moment to breathe, that is when she figures it out. So I think they kind of get away with that, just about. But yeah, it's so for me, I think the movie almost goes too far. It does an awful lot. Like, some of it is unnecessary. I wouldn't have thought about the tickets. It is a thing that I guess nitpickers would have come at and gone like, well, wait a minute. When the airport lady counts the heads versus the tickets she's been handed, wouldn't she have noticed they had one ticket more than bodies? Yeah, it's a good point. I wouldn't have noticed that in the movie. That's like a Harrison Ford, Mark Hamill wet hair it's not that kind of movie, kid moment for me, like where that would be a thing you would nitpick afterwards, but actually in the flow of the movie I wouldn't have noticed. But the reality of it is they covered that too. You know, the passport and his ticket both accidentally get binned the night before, and you see that happen, and like if you have that question, well, there's that answer. So yeah, I was very impressed with actually the movie's effort there. More effort than it probably needed to go into, to be honest, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, completely agree. Completely agree.
Yeah.
And I think the moment she taps the fact that it's two cars and her tapping the other kid is, fantastic. And like you say, a level of detail that it almost probably didn't need to go into.
Yeah, because you could easily just go, well, it's a big family. She didn't notice. They're all sat on the plane, but there's 12 of them, so they're not all in the same aisle. But just to cover you from thinking, well, didn't she look back and notice she was short a child? They're in a different section of the plane. They're in a different car. Like, there's constantly reasons for her to not know who is with them, party-wise, which I think is, again, very clever on the part of John Hughes, who apparently was obsessive as he wrote this script about making it believable. But to move on to your wider point, or just overall thoughts, I think
could I just jump in there?
Sure.
I think it is very clever that they deliberately don't show the children on the plane. Like, the notion is they're probably scattered. Well, they've got a line, haven't they? Just sit wherever you can. You're not going to all be together. Just sit wherever you can. So the notion of them looking round going, right, everyone else must be somewhere.
Well, yeah, there's that, and also they deliberately say that the parents have been upgraded, so the kids are in coach, the parents are in, I don't know, economy plus or whatever they call it, like the next,
I'm talking just about the kids not noticing one of them is missing.
Right, yes, yeah, correct, yeah, I didn't even think about that. Yeah, you're right, that makes perfect sense. Again, that's another, Luke Skywalker's hair should be wet after the trash compactor scene moment where, you're right, if they hadn't had that line, would have never occurred to me, and I'm sure some guy on the internet would have gone, well, why didn't none of the kids notice that Kevin was missing? And I would have gone, oh yeah, good point. But yeah, they even went to the trouble of explaining that. And it's I would say as well, with the amount of information that's thrown at you in the first 20 minutes of this movie, and it is a lot of information, it's all done in a pretty entertaining way. Like, the chaos of the house could easily be a huge problem because it is an info dump. You learn who the family are, what the size of it is. We're doing all this explaining to get away with they left their child at home. But it's fairly entertaining as it's occurring. Like, it's not, you're amused by how ridiculous it is that the family this size, like when the police officer, in quote marks, is like, are your parents here? No. Okay, great. Do you have parents? Yeah. Are they here? No. Like, he's just, going through. He's like, is anyone an adult? Like, I just, that's a really
the one where
funny
it's like,
scene.
are your parents here? I like the one where it's like, are your parents here? Yeah, but they don't own the place.
Yeah, yeah, it's great. Like, that's a funny scene. I'm being fed information, but it's a funny scene. You know what I mean? So, like, all of the scenes are entertaining, even when they're doing exposition. Buzz imparting information about the sidewalk snow scraper guy to bother Kevin, to upset Kevin, to spook Kevin out, is feeding us information, but it's also teaching us about Buzz. So the script is super clever. I mean, Hughes is a genius at this sort of stuff. He was very good at being able to give you information while also, like, entertaining you. And I do think mostly it works. And I think ultimately, if we're just doing overall thoughts very quickly before we go into a real breakdown of the nitty-gritty, like, I think the movie's brilliance comes from its simplicity and the wonderful performances. And when people go simplicity, you go, well, you just described a very complicated sequence of events? Yes, but the actual thrust of the movie is boy left at home, robbers coming in, boy learns meaning of Christmas, mother learns to appreciate her son, son learns to appreciate family. Like, it's very simple. All of the emotional stuff in this movie is deeply simple, presumably to make room for all of the more complicated logistical elements of it. But that actually means that it doesn't feel overwhelming. I feel like if you were also trying to tell me a complicated emotional story, I don't know you'd fit it in. So maybe the choice to keep that simpler is probably smarter in the overall greater picture of it. I do think it suffers in terms of the Catherine O'Hara character, but I think we'll come back to that in more detail a little bit later. I don't think it tries to do more than it can manage, though. The character and story work are almost deliberately thin, I think, once we've explained the setup. And I also think this is maybe one of the cleanest examples of a 3-act structure we've ever had on this podcast.
Yeah, definitely.
It's incredible. It's like he wrote it from a textbook. It's like he literally got like a Sid Field, who's a screenwriting. He writes books on screenwriting. For anyone who's ever studied screenwriting, either enjoys or absolutely despises the name of Sid Field. But he's a guy that wrote all these books on screenwriting. They're often cited, and obviously he based his work on many people that came before him that established this structure. You know, Joseph Campbell's, and then before that, like the even like going back as far as like Greek mythology, all follows this structure. But the premise, the Dan Harmon story wheel, so to speak, is you have a character in a situation who is thrust into a situation where he must sort of accept the call after initially refusing it to go on an adventure of some sort, learn something about themselves, and return to where they started, having changed. And when you look at this movie, Act 1 is set up. It's all, how does Kevin end up alone? Step 2, Act 2, that's the section in the middle of the movie where Kevin is home alone, and we're doing what the funny quote-unquote marks are elements of what would happen if a child was left alone. Would they first jump on the bed and eat loads of junk food, and then eventually realize, actually, I probably need to do laundry and stuff? That's your escalating situation, because there we have the threat of the wet bandits, so to speak, coming in. Then we have the lowest point. He knows he's about to be about the house is about to be invaded. That's the end of Act 2. The character is in dire straits. He doesn't know where he's going to get help. He doesn't know how he's going to resolve his problem. Step 3 is the resolution. It's him overcoming the hurdles, having changed, and returning to where he started having changed is the more specific way to describe it. And that's what this movie does in the third act, which is he overcomes the white bandits, and then he reunites with his family. Like, it's so cleanly a 3-act structure, and the movie could literally be diced into 3 almost perfectly. Like, it's almost every 30-odd minutes, it's like, click, here's the next section, here's the next act break. Like, it's really, really tightly written, and it's kind of incredible how textbook it is. I don't think I've ever noticed that about this movie before, but it is literally set up, escalation, conclusion. And I could not believe it when I was watching it, how good it was at that.
Yeah, it's mad. Yeah, and I think it's, from a script perspective, like you say, like textbook, I think you could study it as a example of that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because it's so clean. I think ultimately I do agree. I think if we're just doing overall before we move into like whether we recommend it and then getting into the nitty-gritty, I think for me, I still recommend it. I think it's a really fun film. It is flawed, and I think the biggest flaw Chris identified very early on, which is actually with the sort of character story and the emotional side, and particularly that relates to Kevin's mother. And I think the movie does her dirty, and it's just there's a step missing in the middle, and that's why we'll come to that. But otherwise, I still think this is a really fun movie.
Yeah, I think I do recommend it. I especially recommend it. I think because of like we talked about, it was on every year, and there's osmosis and stuff. Like it does make you feel nostalgic if you've seen it before. It does make you feel quite Christmassy and comforted. And so I think if you haven't seen it in a while, but you have seen it before, go back, revisit it. I think if you've never seen it, we've probably spoiled a fair amount of things, but if you've never seen it, it is still worth a watch. You should still see it, and you will get something from it. Whether you will, I think it's one of those moments where there are some films that, as we talked about this before, and Ghostbusters is always my go-to example of it. There are some films you need to watch at the right age, and I think if you're older and you've never seen this movie, you will probably still enjoy it, but it won't hit you. It won't do what I would think Back to the Future, for example, has the potential to still do. And Jurassic Park, to use an example where I don't have a particular personal bias, I think, we've not reviewed it on here, can't say for sure, but I think Jurassic Park still works when you... I guess I can speak to that. I watched it for the first time, really, as an adult. I think Jurassic Park and to clarify,
I rewatched it 3 years ago, on a big screen. They did a re-release, and
Yeah.
it was glorious. It's glorious. Jurassic Park is a very special place in my heart. I had every reason in the world to be disappointed with it as an adult. It's the first movie I saw in a cinema. It was fucking magic, and like to watch it as an adult was really risky, especially to do it in a cinema. Like, will this ever live up to what I felt watching it as a child? And it did. It really did. So I that is definitely a movie that holds up regardless, I think.
Yeah, and I think this one falls into the camp of you may go, oh, I don't, it's all right, but I don't see why it's this big cultural thing. But you may still enjoy it. So I think there are kind of, I have a kind of, which we often do, a 2-part recommend. I think if you've watched it as a kid, watch it again. Like it's worth sitting down and watching again, and sort of marveling at the things you will notice as an adult. Because we're doing a critical podcast. There will be some people that watch it as an adult and go, fucking hell, they are monsters to this kid, and just find that amusing. Yeah. I think if you've never seen it, you will potentially still enjoy it, but you will be more likely to go, okay. But in both scenarios, I still recommend. I think I do recommend it stronger if you've already seen it and saw it as a child.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. I don't know how if this movie hits for a person who has no nostalgia or memory of it or knowledge of it, like other than just because again, I think the thing people think of, even if you've not seen it, through cultural osmosis, if you close your eyes and you picture Home Alone and you're a person who's not seen the movie, you're seeing the iconic stuff, right? You're picturing him jumping on the bed, you're picturing him slapping his face and screaming, and then you're picturing him throwing paint cans at Joe Pesci, which, some of the best moments of the movie, for sure. I'm on board with that being the thing you're thinking of. I understand why those moments are iconic, but I don't know if they reflect the movie as it ends up being, and I'm not sure expectations will affect your viewing of it. I've always been curious. This is going to be such a weird left turn. So sorry. The movie The Day After Tomorrow. I remember I only saw it once, and I remember being bitterly disappointed because I thought it was going to be a big action epic, and it's actually sort of a slightly more ponderous piece about the end of life and the end of the world. It's not really, the big action movie. It was kind of the big sort of destruction, like Independence Day type movie they sold it as. And I've always wondered if I go back into it kind of knowing that it's a more slow piece, would I enjoy it for what it is, or is it just not a very good movie? I genuinely don't know. Yeah. I always think back to that.
I've also only seen it once, and fun fact, I saw that movie the first time I ever got drunk.
Was that right? Were you drunk when you saw the movie then? Yeah. Or did you see the movie then get drunk because it was so bad?
But I think we started. Well, to be honest with you, Dan, I didn't realise I was drunk. I thought I was just, I've had a few beers and I thought kind of any of that sort of way feeling was me slightly going in my head. Me slightly going, oh, I've had a few beers, so I better be a bit like way. And then the next morning, my dad picked me up, and he was like, "What the fuck's happened to you?" And I was like, "Oh, nothing." And then I was like, "Oh, we did have a few beers, but we didn't have many." And Dad's like, "Oh, well, this is a hangover." And I was like, "No, it's not. I'm fine." And then just over the course of the car journey, just fucking sweat pouring off me, and just being like, "Dad, I don't feel well." Dad's like, "Yeah, you're hungover." I didn't realise I was drunk until the next day, is what I'm saying.
Amazing. That's incredible.
I think we started the film and had I don't think we were peak drunk. We were peak drunk after the film when we were messaging girls we liked on MSN. That's when we were peak drunk.
Oh man, is there anything more that makes you a 90s kid than messaging girls on MSN?
Exactly. So yeah, late 90s, but in reality,
it was all about MSN and the Yahoo chat rooms.
So in reality, I was probably a little bit drunk for the film, but yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Anyway,
yeah. Should we get
Yeah,
into the
I
nitty-gritty
agree.
then?
It
So,
would
so
be
we
interesting
are
to
recommending it, but with caveats, I think. I don't think it's a bad movie. I think it's a classic for a reason. I think, there's a bit of Hughes magic in there. I think actually some of the movie's problems come from the boisterous John Hughes voice meeting the more earnest Chris Columbus voice, and the chasm that exists between the two.
Yeah, I'll say this as well. It's not, it's not the worst John Hughes movie to look at with a modern eye, is it? So
No, we'll be covering those at some point, presumably. But yeah, John Hughes. Look, I've got very mixed feelings on John Hughes. John Hughes is famous for putting scripts together in like a weekend or two, and therefore he was very prolific. He wrote a huge number of movies in a very short space of time. Very sadly passed away. 100% taken too early. Can't even think of some of the great movies that might exist had John Hughes not left us so soon. But with that said, I think his filmography in all is very mixed bag. When it worked brilliantly. But he had a very particular tone and a very particular thing that he did, and when it hit, it really hit. And I think here it bumped up slightly against Chris Columbus, who wanted to make a slightly, maybe, I don't use the word emotional, maybe a sappier Christmas movie, something a bit more in the spirit of Christmas, something about family, because I feel like the original movie was just all about the japes, the very extreme, like this family treat this kid like shit. He gets left alone because he doesn't want to deal with them, and in the end, he kind of wants them back. That's the and I feel like Columbus added the subplot with the old man, and I feel like Columbus made some adjustments to the mother's story getting back home too. I'm sure that was probably there in the original, but I feel like it was there for jokes. She's on a road trip, getting into japes. And I feel like Columbus made it more of I need to get back to my son. That's my feeling. I don't know that. They've never talked about who did what in the script, but I know that when Columbus got the script and he read it initially, he loved it, and then asked if he was okay to do some bits of work on it if he was going to direct it, and he rewrote some bits. Hughes went, ooh, yeah, okay, and then made some more changes to his changes, and then it went back and forth for like months before it got shooting. So I know that this script ended up being a bit of a hydra, so to speak, of their two visions. And I think in some places that really works for the movie, and in some places it really hurts the movie. And let's break down properly the biggest one, and I do think it is Catherine O'Hara's character. As Chris pointed out right at the beginning, let's talk more specifically about it. She is not particularly great with Kevin. Doesn't get a moment to show any kind of remorse in the moment or the next day until she realizes he's already gone. And I feel like actually one thing the movie could have done that would have really fixed that is if when she'd gotten into bed the night before the chaos of the next morning, she'd have expressed sadness at how she left things with Kevin and was like, yeah, we didn't treat him very well tonight. It's okay. I'll make it up to him across the holiday. I'll talk to him once we're there. We'll figure this out. I need to reconnect with my son a bit, because otherwise what happens is the regret she feels throughout the movie gets all muddled up with her feelings of being a bad mother just because she left him. And I feel like she should have felt bad prior to that. Yeah. And if we'd have had that moment, we would maybe have bought her journey more. And that's what I said earlier about a missing step in the middle. I think that's what's missing. I don't know. Are you feeling the same way?
I don't think it even needs to be the night before. Like, at any point during one of her scenes, you could have her say, look, not only did we leave him, but I didn't treat him very well just before we left him.
Yes.
Like, have that guilt inform her actions throughout.
I would be worried, though, that would be like, when someone dies and a person sort of starts thinking about the last thing they said to them and what have you. Like, it's too informed by the reality of she just did a shitty thing and left her son and forgot him. So the reason I said I would like it to be the night before, very specifically, is so she feels and understands that prior to actually doing a very shitty thing of forgetting her child at home when she leaves the country. And that way it's honest. It's not because of the other thing. Does that make sense? I feel like it would be important to make the audience understand that. I don't disagree that it could also work that way, and it certainly will be better than what we have, but I think it's most powerful if said separate from the then practical thing that she does that's terrible, which is leaving my home.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
So yeah, I don't know. I mean, and like it does inform all of her scenes, because all of the scenes that follow without that step in either version, the version where she expresses that after she's realized she's left him, and that's the last thing I said to him, even if we do that, everything that follows just has no weight to it. Like Catherine O'Hara, bless her, is just doing the absolute best job to sell it, and she comes real close to making it work, even without the script really backing her. In the scenes when she's begging people, like when she begs that couple for their ticket, like that's really emotional. When she's talking to the ticket desk guy in wherever she lands, I completely lose track of her journey. She gets on a plane out of France and then ends up in like, I don't know where, somewhere where you can then drive to Chicago, but like, who knows why that is? I mean, it probably do say it in the movie, I'm sure. But when she's there and she's talking to the ticket guy, go on, sir.
I remember the band are on their way to Milwaukee, but I can't remember where.
My brain says Nova Scotia, but I think that's Canada. I don't know. I have no idea where things are in America. I'm terrible with American geography. I know Canada's not America, I understand, but like all of that, like North America, Canada, Mexico, that whole region of the world, I have no idea where anything is in relation to anything else. But anyway, my point being, she has a big emotional chat with the ticket guy there, which is overheard by the John Candy character, and then it becomes about that, and that gets pulled in. But like both of those things, Catherine O'Hara sells them so hard, but the script doesn't back her up with the dialogue from before that. Like it really lets her down, in my opinion, like as a character, and it's just so hard to buy it. Other than you just feel guilty because of the thing you did. You're not actually, like, you've not naturally come to the conclusion that you need to treat your son better. You've learnt nothing. Yeah.
Yeah. And even at the end, the apology feels... Although, does she kind of apologise for both at the end? Or is it, I'm sorry we left you?
I think it's, I'm sorry we left you. My favorite thing about the ending, and I will never get over this as long as I live, and even as a kid this felt weird, we're back and Kevin's here. Yay! Now let's all go into a different room and leave Kevin in this corridor.
It's mad, right? And I also love, I think, and actually, let's keep on Catherine Hahn, because I have a big comment about the guy next door as well, who as a character I like, but I'll come back to it. I think the other thing is there are moments where she seems to be like, the two that got me was like she kind of smiles a little bit when she's with John Candy, but no, the big one is it's when they're leaving each other and the dad's just like. Don't you get lost too? And they're all like giggles and smile, and I'm like, what the fuck is happening? Like, the reality of this situation would be two parents just like staring at the ground and not talking to each other out of being so mortified that they've done this. It's not like giggles and we'll go back to the apartment. Don't you get lost? Like, what the fuck's going on?
And I think this is exactly that thing of the two tones clashing, because I think the original script just ignored the weight of it and made it a silly comedy. And if the movie doesn't tell you that the situation is that serious and that it's just a funny situation, then you take it as that, and then you can have jokes, and it doesn't matter, right? If the character's like, oh no, we left Kevin, better get home quick, and it's played goofy, it's played comedic, with no emotional resonance, which is, I assume, what the original script did, the fully John Hughes script. Then it's just a goofball movie, and the slapstick stuff, and, there's a kid left home, and he's jumping on the bed, and, like, eating junk food, and, like, fun. Like, it's designed that way then. But when you have that movie... clash with this much more earnest script. And again, I am speculating. I will repeat this. I am very much speculating on who brought what to the movie. It's partially informed by some of Christopher Columbus's comments in the Movies That Made Us episode he did. Where he talked about bringing some more. I don't think he used the word heart, but bringing some more emotion to the movie. I'm not phrasing it. It's not a quote, but I'm paraphrasing what he sort of implied. So I'm kind of taking it from that. But yeah, that's what you're describing is exactly what happens when you take a goofy comedy movie that doesn't take anything too seriously and then add pathos. It's exactly what happens. Yeah. You get these weird moments where the tones clash horribly. They're mostly inoffensive. It doesn't ruin the movie, but there are definitely a few eyebrow raises across the entire movie of that, for sure. Yeah. And being let's take an interlude to have John Candy improvise for several minutes as well. As funny as those scenes are, those scenes could have been used to have Catherine O'Hara express more character stuff. But instead, it's well, hey, John Candy's here to say funny shit. And it's cool, and it's great. And look, I love John Candy. And again, another one taken away too fucking soon. And what a delight it is that we have this on film. Just him improvising absolute madness. And I love it. The story in the van about the kid at the funeral home, which he entirely improvised, by the way, is fucking a work of art, a work of comedic genius.
I really enjoyed him naming songs.
Yes.
It's the bit where he's they were big hits for us. And then he's that one sold 623 copies.
And he's polka. Honestly, the kid funeral story, when he was he was traumatized, he was left with the body all day. But that bit just cracked me up when he reveals that he didn't just leave the kid at the funeral. That story gets worse and worse the longer it goes on, and you can feel John Candy's brain reaching to make it worse with every single sentence, and it's great. It's really funny. But again, these are moments when the comedy movie is clashing with the more earnest movie that Chris Columbus is trying to make. I feel like.
Can I ask, actually, just before I forget?
Yes.
And we need to sort of summarise the Catherine Hahn thing. But did you, and maybe Triv has an answer to this. Mm-hmm. Did you watch this film via Disney Plus?
Oh, I didn't know. No, I realised afterwards I could have, but it never occurred to me, and I watched the movie elsewhere first, and then I was like, oh yeah, okay. It's just on Disney Plus. Is there, out of curiosity, what's the reason? Do you think it's been edited in some way on Disney Plus?
Because I swear down, I saw a scene in this movie I've never seen before. I do not remember this scene at all, and it felt like I was watching a version with a deleted scene put in. The scene where he goes and speaks to Santa Claus.
Yes, no, that's always been there. It's a great scene though.
All right.
Yeah.
I just could never remember it then. Okay.
Yeah. It's such a sad scene. I love that. Can I say that's one of my favourite scenes in the whole movie? Because that poor guy playing Santa just does not know what to do. And it's so tragic.
No, but the way he reacts to him is so sweet and earnest. I really, really
I wonder if that scene exists purely from a Chris Columbus perspective, because it feels like that's the movie that scene represents the movie Chris Columbus is making. And I feel like the John Candy scene, it represents the movie, the sort of goofier, more carefree movie John Hughes is making.
Yeah, I will because I think we've covered the mum of it all, but I will say, I will echo what you said, that the fact that it works at all, and it does work a little bit, but that for me is all down to the performance. That 100%. Catherine O'Hara is Catherine O'Hara, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Is putting in, she's absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, absolutely incredible. Let's quickly break down just the initial issue as well of just the family mistreating Kevin just outside of her. It's crazy, those scenes, right? It's no, I've never seen a movie where, the only other movie I can think of where all the characters just inexplicably hate the main character for no good reason It's the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies. Like, everyone in the world just hates Peter Parker, and the movie never gives a reason why. He seems reasonably nice, and it's okay for some people to not like you. No one is everyone's cup of tea. But that movie exists in a world where just, like, it's like everyone got hit by a special beam that makes them hate Peter Parker. Like, literally everyone. And it's like, it's just so many people, you just go like, what did he do? Does the movie skip over the fact maybe he was like he'd been accused of a murder or something? Like, what did he do to turn the world on him?
I think even there are adults in a room, right?
Yeah.
And if you're an adult in a room,
yeah,
and you've got children, right? Even if you think, and it's inexplicable that they think it's Kevin's fault, that they can't even entertain a world that Buzz has taunted him, right?
Yeah.
But say you rage because of the tickets or whatever. Say there's a world where you somehow do think it's Kevin's fault, right? I can't fathom that the sentence, "Kevin, you're such a disease," wouldn't make one of the adults in the room go, no, come on.
Yeah, Kevin, you're such a disease. One of the adults says, "Look what you did, you little jerk off." Like,
oh, that's the thing. Yeah, because it's that one as well. Because I'm sorry. Because again, you've got to think of the context of there's not many things I could have done. I don't think that if my uncle called me a little jerk off, wouldn't just in defense mechanism alone make my mum or dad go, hold the front fucking door here. Like, no, you can't speak to our child like that.
Yeah, it's
that's
actually
fucking
insane.
mad.
And look, again, that line, I think, is maybe a remnant of an early draft. We'll talk about that, because let me tell you, Uncle Frank was a very different character in the first draft, and we'll talk about that later. I'm so excited to tell you the batshit original idea for that character in the original draft of this script.
I did.
Fucking insane.
While we're talking about Uncle Frank, I left my sunglasses behind did make me laugh.
Yes, I wrote that down. That's one of my favourite lines. It's the scene where Catherine O'Hara's character, who, I'm sorry, I keep forgetting the name of the character, but when Kevin's mum first realises she's Kevin, she's like, I can't believe I left my son. He goes, well, if it makes you feel any better, I left my sunglasses behind. Actually killed me. It actually killed. It's a great line. And the guy, I got to give credit to the actor. I don't know his name off the top of my head, but he delivers that line so well. It's great. It's very, very funny. She's called Kate McAllister, I've just discovered. Uncle Frank, played by someone. I can't find him. Why is he not in the first page of credits? That's crazy. How many cast members must be in a movie for, like, Uncle Frank, who has multiple lines in the movie, to not even be on the first page on IMDb? Christ. Well, he can't be listed behind Gangster 1 and Gangster 2. I refuse. I must have missed him. Right, let me find him. I don't want to shout the guy out. Oh, there you go. Gary Bamman. Uncle Frank. So,
to be fair, there is a world, because I assume Gangster 1 and Gangster 2 are from
the movie
Angels with Dirty Faces.
Yeah.
There is a world where their voices are potentially heard more in this movie than Uncle Frank.
That's true. A little bit of a bonus truth that I don't think I included, but it's funny. Those two actors were actually originally going to play the opposite roles to each other, and then for whatever reason, just chemistry, delivery of lines, they ended up switching them around. So obviously, the guy that shot the other guy originally the other guy was going to shoot the other guy. The lines were going to be all flipped. And the guy that gets shot in the final movie was actually really sad that happened, because it meant he couldn't reprise the role in the sequel. And he was really disappointed that the roles got reversed, because I think they bring back the first guy in the second movie in another movie. It's like either at the end of this movie or a sequel to this movie or something. So yeah, I just thought that was kind of funny.
That's a shame. They could have brought that guy back and no one would have noticed. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Or it could. You just think it was like an early movie or something. Yeah, agreed.
Or just like Clint, like how many fucking westerns did Clint Eastwood do? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I agree. It wouldn't have made a difference. Just a little tiny note. Do you want to just pop with me to Nitpick Corner, Chris? You know, just put your shoes on, just have a little walk to Nitpick Corner.
Let me hop on my Christmas snow boots.
Yeah, please do. Wade through that deep snow. I like Kevin wishing his family away. And I love the element of this movie that this kid thinks his family are gone because he wished it. I think that's a delightful premise. It explains certain behaviors, why he doesn't, like, try to call the police or, like, do more than he does, basically. Because he thinks he's on his own because he wished them away, and I think he feels guilty about that, right? It explains an awful lot. But also, it's just a fun idea, right? And it also then leads to the really beautiful Santa scene where he, like, I wish them back, basically. But what I don't like, I like him saying out loud, I wish I didn't have a family. What I didn't then need when he gets into bed was to sort of have his thoughts, like, played audibly to me, the listener, in, like, a weird echoey tone. I wish my family would disappear. As he lies in bed pensively. That felt like a studio note to me, where they went, no one's going to get what he thinks has happened here. We're going to have to clarify. It made perfect sense without it. Drove me insane. It's the only time in the entire movie we hear a person's thoughts. Other than when he's remembering everyone being mean to him.
I was going to say, yeah, when he's remembering,
but that's we're just playing the footage back with one exception. Like, that's fine. But hearing his actual voice in his head, it's the only time in the movie they do it, and it stands out like a sore thumb. I hate it so much. I hate it so much, Chris. Anyway.
Yeah, that's fair. They are horrendous. For me, it's like I've said, I don't want to repeat, but equally, I don't think I've said anything about this point since my original points. But it's like, how do you not identify? How has Buzz not created a persona that makes you go, well, he probably provoked, like he has been his entire life? How are you so mean? How do you not go, guys, this is stupid? Like, you know, you'd almost be better. Like, oh, would it have almost be better if the mum wasn't in the room? But then I suppose she's going to be less firm with him. And I think it's that as well. It's like, you know, sending him to the naughty corner or the basement, because even that's a technical detail as well with that, which is brilliant, with that many, about the logistics of how did they get away with this. You know, the logistic of, with that many people in the house, they would be sharing rooms, going, you know, going, oh, well, we'll have him sleep somewhere else, like you can sleep alone. But I just, it's a real struggle to believe that it would, you know, end on that note. Like, and maybe, because he says in the film later, doesn't he, I've not been too kind recently or something. And maybe have references to him going through a bit of a phase. And like he's been annoying people recently. Like, I think you could still then win us round to the character, because, you know, Kevin's journey of first being happy but then missing them and looking at the picture and all, and, you know, asking Santa for his family back. Like, you could still do that journey even if he's a little bit of a shit at the beginning.
Yeah, I agree.
But yeah, maybe try and justify it a bit more. But we just don't see any evidence that Kevin deserves this treatment.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree.
I have a structural, did you notice this as well, question, Dan.
Hit me.
I really truly love the scene in the church between him and the neighbour, right? I think it's a beautiful scene. I think the neighbour, the actor playing the neighbour, I don't have his name to hand, but I think he's brilliant in that scene, right? But that scene is, the power and the beauty of that scene is, don't take your family for granted, both ways. You know, that's what he's saying, that's what Kevin's saying, you know. There's a lot of stuff there about family and how he feels about family. It is not a rally cry to defend the house, which the movie then pretends it is. And like that speech and that moment leads to him rushing home and being like, I will defend my house, or whatever he says. And I'm just watching it like, I don't think that's what that scene was. Like, did you feel that? Am I being unfair?
No, I think you're exactly right. It's kind of strange, isn't it? It's like it's a motivating, but for a different thing. And then he just, you know, and you kind of go along with it because it's like, you know, you're aching for the movie to get to the thrust, to get to the point, to get to the pointy end, as they say here in Australia. You want it to get to defend the house. So like you're sort of like you accept it, but yeah, you're absolutely right. The conversation has absolutely nothing to do with that. And
It's funny,
the
isn't it,
character I believe he plays is called Marley, which I think is a direct reference to Christmas Carol.
Yeah,
and I think he's a really interesting inclusion because obviously it's how Kevin learns his lesson about family through him and about making up with family and stuff. And it's, it is interesting that like it's Kevin that teaches. It's Kevin demonstrating he understands that and telling the adult, no, you need to call your son. And he's like, but what if he doesn't like me? What if he rejects me? I'm scared. And it's like, wait a minute, this is the wrong way around. Shouldn't the adult be giving the kid advice? But Macaulay Culkin, at whatever age he was here, 9, 10, just absolutely on fire in this movie. Like what an incredible talent he is. Watching him work here as a child is magical. It's so easy to understand why he rose the way he did, because it's a staggering performance. And even though you're right on paper that doesn't work, you still just go along with it. I think, and it's because that scene is really powerfully written. And I think Marley as a character is really good. My only criticism of Marley is like why he's so if he's someone who's like, oh, I wish the kids wouldn't start spreading these rumors about me. He's not doing a lot to dispel that by menacingly staring for the first half of the movie. The scene in the store, for a man that doesn't want people to believe like the rumors kids spread about him because they're all like, oh, he murdered his family or whatever, because cruelly they've noticed he doesn't have one, which I think is a nice little detail. The way to dispel that isn't to grumpily drag your snow shovel into a store and then land at the counter and then just stare at a child for 30 seconds until he backs out in fear. What are you doing?
It's a great performance though, isn't it? Because you believe both. You believe the gentle, sweet man and you believe the threatening, scary man. It's a really, really good performance.
Yeah, you do. Even if it doesn't quite make sense that he's not like... Because I'm okay. Like when he's just like, out there tiredly moving snow or whatever, that he might not have his best face on when the kid comes out to be like, hi guys, but in the store, like it could have just we could have just like, I think in reality, if you wanted to not terrify the local children, maybe just a nice hello would have been good there and a smile. But anyway, no, you're right. Roberts Blossom is the actor's name, and he does a great job. My favorite thing about that, though, is that years ago there was a weird internet rumor and story that wasn't he wasn't an actor, that it was like a real homeless man. And I think it was like a joke website posted it, and then people really believed it, and that they just filmed him without his knowledge for the movie. And I think the punchline of the joke, if you're at the full article, was that he only discovered a couple of years ago when he sat down and watched this movie that he was in it, and then he was suing, Fox or whoever. It was a fake story, obviously. It was like designed to be satire, and then I think some people genuinely believed it, which really amused me.
What's bad about that is it's like, guys, he's a vital part of the final act. He knocks them out.
What do you think they did? Oh, excuse me, homeless man. Can you just head into this house for us? Why? Oh, there's a kid in there in trouble. I think you need to help him. I'll take my shovel and I'll smash that guy in the face, shall I? Well, maybe don't do that to Joe Pesci. Who? Don't worry about it. Just head in and sort it out.
It is mad, though, isn't it? Because a much better plan would have been if Kevin said to him at the church, right, these two guys are going to come by and try and rob the house. Can we let them start and then call the police from your house? And then the police will catch him in the act.
Yeah, Kevin could have literally just gone across the road to his house, waited in the house while they wait for the police to arrive. 100%, and that's what should have happened, I guess, in a movie where everyone thinks sensibly. But we are dealing with a child, so I'm kind of okay with them with that being the case.
Can I raise another point about the rushing home to defend the house thing?
Sure.
We've got the town bells crying for the hour. Mm-hmm. And we've also got, as he runs, the lights turning on. And we have literally established earlier in the movie the exact time those lights come on. Which means one, Marv and Harry are late. Yep. They're there after 7 because the lights are coming on after 7.
Well, the lights come on at 8.
It also...
the lights come on at 8 if the earlier part of the movie is to be believed, and they said they're going to come at 7, and then they don't come until 9 in the end, I think.
Yeah, because then Kevin's like formulating his plan, and I'm like, how quick has he come up with this and put it all together?
According to the information of the movie, an hour, I think.
Right. Okay. Okay.
I agree with you though. The timings don't make sense. Or no, they physically work in the sense of they do follow on from each other. But yeah, it requires Marv and Harry to be a lot later than they planned, and it requires Kevin to have not had as much time as realistically he'd need to set up all of his House of Horrors, as Marv calls it. Harry calls it. Sorry.
Also, how does tar work? How's he able to get it out of that pot? But you know what I mean? Does it become sticky as it sets?
Yeah, I think once you it's like melted chocolate. If it's in a big bowl, it doesn't harden very quickly. It doesn't set very quickly because it's dense, and it's maintained its heat and its structure. When you lay it out thin, you paint it on something, then it's thin, and then it starts to set and it goes sticky. I think. I just every time I see something like that, like tar or something DIY, I want you to know, and this is out of affection for you, I want you to know that whenever I see anyone laying something like that, or we're doing some work at the moment, and whenever things like sealant comes up, I want you to know how much I picture and I smile, and it warms my heart the image of the time that you basically went nuts around your kitchen laying cork everywhere. Because I thought I had enough time to do it before a podcast, and I didn't at all, and I rushed it and made an absolute fucking pig's ear of it in a panic, and then tried to correct it, and it made it worse, and then I had to just come do a podcast while the chaos set. I do remember that, yeah. It was a good time. Then I had to go in and remove it all and redo it calmly another day and do it correctly, and it looked fine afterwards. The more we talk, I meant to say this point just a minute ago, the fact that speech is in the church isn't the rally cry to defend the house, but then follows it. The more we talk, the more this does feel like a movie that has got two distinct tones and ambitions smashed together slightly. 100%. And I think it's things like that make my mate go, I don't really understand why everyone loves this movie when watching it, as an adult. Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's an imperfect film for sure, but I get why it has captured the imagination. I mean, the thing is, and I said this at the beginning, the simplicity and the performances really sell this movie. Because the next thing I want to talk about was Harry and Marv, and I just want to credit Daniel Stern and Joe Pesci for bringing these two cartoonish villains to life. They're definitely part of the John Hughes side of the movie because they're very exaggerated and very cartoony, but my God, is it fun to watch them fall about and do slapstick cartoon stuff. And that 14-minute sequence where they're coming into the house and Kevin McAllister has set his little House of Horrors for them is, from minute to minute, just top to bottom, a delight to watch. It's just full of amazing slapstick comedy, and obviously a lot of the performances comes from stunt actors too. I'm fully aware of that, who are just amazing at throwing themselves to the ground, but also throwing themselves into the air first, so they don't just fall over. They sort of fall up into the air like a cartoon character, and then come flying down. It's incredible. I swear, if this movie was in any way realistic, they'd be dead without a question. They would, the paint cans to the head from that height, their skulls would be exploded. They'd be very dead. The iron falling from that height, probably dead. That's that's not leaving a mark on your face. That's probably killing you. The blowtorch, probably dead. Or at least serious scarring and deformity from that.
We talked about it on Nothing But Static on one of the Christmas specials. They've started doing them most years, where basically Sky will air a thing where two comedians go through and talk through the set pieces of movies. So they've done Home Alone, they've done Die Hard, and I think it was it was definitely James Acaster. I can't remember who did it with him. Maybe Nish Kumar, maybe, but they have an expert on going through the actual effects of of these things, and it's horrific. Like you say, the answers in the majority of cases is they'd be dead. But yeah, it was. I think it was called The Stunts of Home Alone or something like that. And they talk through this shit would kill you.
But like the comedy of that sequence is incredible. Like it must be said. Like I must make it very, very clear. Like the reactions. I mean, Daniel Stern's scream when the spider is placed on his face is an all timer. Like Hollywood should still be giving him awards for that. Like, it's like this guttural scream of absolute terror. It's just incredible, the noise he makes when that spider hits his face. And I think, like, you know, the grumpiness of Joe Pesci developing his own sort of language to avoid swearing because he's used to doing movies where he's allowed to swear and he couldn't in this one. So it's you know, these things that sound like swear words, but it's just gruff noises. Like absolutely, just everything about this sequence is perfection. It works so well. Obviously, you know, if you wanted to be, you know, in reality, like obviously half of these traps would not have worked because how would you know what door they were going to go through when? You couldn't predict the movements the way that Kevin does.
The ice sets pretty quickly as well, doesn't it? I know it's cold, but
yeah, the ice sets pretty quickly. You know, like I don't know. There's a few of these where you're like you really have to rely. Like that nail on the stairs is my least favorite to watch because it does genuinely look horrendous. It makes me sick to my stomach every time I see it. But the chances of him actually directly standing on that one nail in the staircase, pretty slim, right? It's in the middle, sure, but you might have stood slightly to the left of that. Or to the right of it, like he might. Well, you know what I mean?
Mate, let's not forget that comes at the end of the tar stairs. Most people, the minute they lose a shoe, would probably have stepped down and gone, "I'll go back outside and try and find another way in."
Yeah, right. It's insane. And then like the paint cans, like the accuracy he has to hit them both with the paint. Like if you tied a paint can, right, Chris, onto like a sort of a fulcrum swing like that, and you had a target underneath the staircase like Kevin does here, you tried to hit it, it would take you 4 or 5 goes easily. And that's on a good day.
I'm going to defend that one.
Oh, yeah?
I'm going to defend that one. Yeah, because I think they set that up earlier on in the movie. He does some expert shooting and aiming when he's shooting the toy figures down the laundry chute. So I think they set up that Kevin's a good aim. And when I watched that scene, I was like, "Oh, that's setting up for later."
No, I don't think. I disagree. I think the aim for a gun is very different from. I think if you take the world's most expert, you know, shooter, you get that guy from the Olympics that everyone thought was like a trained assassin that did the shooting and came, I think, third or second, like that amazing guy. But he just didn't do it with the guards or any of the stuff. He just casually pulled out his gun and shot it. It was very good. You could take that guy and you say, now throw a paint can with accuracy, and you're not just throwing it ahead of you. You're throwing it at a point in front of you where it's going to pull on the rope and then swing down underneath you, and you're going to have to hit a target. Not the same skill. Not even remotely the same skill. I strongly disagree. I think that explains why he's good shot with the BB gun or the air gun or whatever you call it, the rifle. But it does not explain his accuracy with those paint cans at all. Yeah, that's remarkable. And every time I watch that, I think, you know, realistically, does that work? No, obviously not. But do I enjoy watching them get cracked in the head with this paint cans and then doing the fall down the stairs? Yes, I do. It is weirdly, we don't often use the words live action cartoon on this podcast, but weirdly, the other time I can remember doing it was Jingle All the Way, another Christmas movie. So that seems to keep coming up. And another time, actually, was a Gremlins movie. So the live action cartoon and Christmas seem to really come together as a concept. But yeah, this whole sequence is incredible.
Oh, by the way, just to say, I looked it up. It was called The Unofficial Science of Home Alone, and it was Gus Kahn and James Acaster, and they interviewed Daniel Stern on it. So, brilliant. You know, it's a fun, silly Christmas show to watch if you fancy it.
Agreed.
I think universally most people would say the cartoonish end sequence is probably when the movie's at its best.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think that partly is also because like they do such a good job balancing, because I think one of the trickiest things this movie needs to do is couple menacing with comedic with Harry and Marv, right? Because they have to be a threat or the movie has no tension. But they have to be dumb enough to be comedic. Do you know what I mean? It has to be funny to watch them do stupid things, get caught out by a child. Do you know what I mean? Like there's a catharsis to that. And the movie, for that last sequence to work, the movie really has to find a good balance with them earlier on, I think. And both in the writing and the performances, I think all of the Harry Marv stuff is basically pitch perfect. I think the way those two characters interact with each other, I think their level of menace, but also mild incompetence, is on display really early on. It's just perfect. It's so good. And without that, the last sequence is good, but not great. I think one of the things that makes it sing is very much that brilliant combination of writing and performance as well. And I think Pesci and Daniel Stern just, oh my God, like performance of a lifetime, legitimately. And I know I'm talking about Joe Pesci, one of the planet's most accomplished actors. I can't remember if he specifically won an Oscar for anything, but definitely Oscar nominated multiple times. This is still one of his best performances because this is such a different skill a different muscle he's exercising here. And it's so right he understands the movie he's in better than anyone, it seems. And same with Daniel Stern. Just incredible. Love them both in this. It's delightful.
He did. I don't have what it was for, but he did win. Oh, no, I do. So he has won. He won Best Supporting Actor for Goodfellas. So yes, he did win an Academy Award.
Yeah.
Yeah. I will say as well, I think there are moments during the middle portion of the movie, Kevin's Home Alone. There are moments during that which I do think are a little slow. There's a specific section. I don't like the fact that they redo the Angels with Dirty Faces bit with Daniel Stern. Because it's the same joke they've literally just done
with the pizza guy. Yeah.
Or I can't remember which comes first. I think it's the Pizza Boy.
Pizza Boy.
So there are moments that are slow, and there are moments that are a slog during that section. But every single time, even in that section, that Frank and Merv are on screen, it's entertaining. Like they hold up those bits. Like for me, the one I really enjoyed, because it was almost like a more modern style of comedy, is when they're sat in the van. And which way round is it? Joe Pesci's Frank, is that right? And Daniel Stern's Merv?
Harry. It's Harry and Frank.
Oh, sorry, Harry and Frank.
No, sorry, Harry and Frank. Sorry, Harry and Merv. I got confused. Sorry, Harry and Merv, not Frank. No, Frank.
Harry and Merv. Right.
Frank is the name of the uncle.
Yes, that's it. Harry and Merv. Sorry, apologies.
And Joe Pesci is Harry, and Merv is Daniel Stern.
It's the bit where Harry goes, "Go check it out," and Merv just stares. He just almost just stares at camera, and then he's like, "What now?"
Yeah,
it's the small moments like that that are just really fun, and those two, whenever they are on screen, and like you say, it's the perfect gelling of actor and script. But the movie is never dull, I don't think, when those two are on screen, and there are moments during the middle act that things are a little dull, if we're honest.
Yeah. The thing is, so many of those scenes are good for different reasons, and it's like there's always something in them that's good, but I think it's a combination of too many scenes doing the same thing. That is the issue, I think. It's funny to watch Kevin work out how to be home alone and see him improving. Going from eating junk food, staying up all night, jumping on the bed, to I'm going to have to go out and get a toothbrush, check if it's approved by the dental association or whatever. But also I need to do my laundry and learning to not be scared of the boiler and all of that stuff. It's just there's so many scenes like that. They take up such a length of time and they're all kind of telling us the same story. And I feel like everything else in the movie, when it has a big character thrust or a big shift, happens across just one or two scenes. So the fact they take so many scenes to do that stuff for Kevin, and it's not any deeper, than just he learns to look after himself, which we set up in the beginning of the movie in a quick line. The fact there are like 5 or 6 scenes telling us that he's learned to look after himself ends up feeling redundant, even if they're individually good. I like the scene when he goes into the shop and the cashier questions him. On its own, in isolation, that's a delightful scene. When she scans the army men and he's like, for the kids, and she's like, you on your own? He's like, of course not, my mum's outside, don't be ridiculous, Like, that's a really delightful scene, but we just did that with the toothbrush. Do you know what I mean? Like, where an adult questions him at a shop. Like, it's like... Yeah, so I think it's just the repetitive nature of some of those sequences that I think is the issue, more than any of the scenes themselves not working. And that's a real shame, because there's some really good stuff in there. It just about passes. Like, I wasn't so bored I was, like, reaching for my phone. But the movie slows down for sure in the second act. Quite substantially, I think.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, again, it's one of those things that an adult watching it for the first time is like, oh, this isn't what I was expecting. Where's the cartoon?
Also the middle section of the movie has all of the logistics of like, oh, we need to get home, try and call other families. Oh, we called the police. The police are saying so around. Kevin's scared, so he's ignoring them. These are just like, we're just doing this to sort of explain that we tried, sort of stuff. And I honestly, I don't know. Like, I mean, it's good. It's good that they're there. They explain, why didn't the police bother? But like, I don't know. I don't know if I need to see that. And there's also multiple scenes of Marv and Harry. Like, just there's like 3 different scenes where they go to the McAllister house thinking it's empty and discovering it's full before they then realize that it's just a kid. And like, that's one scene of that too many, I think. You know what I mean? There's the initial one where they show up and just the lights come on. Then there's the one where they go and he set up a whole fake house, which is my favorite one. I love the cardboard Michael Jordan and the mannequins all being moved around. That's delightful. Yeah. I love that scene. Makes the whole house look full. And then there's a third time they go and then he thinks it's fucking Marv thinks it's like it's a gangster that runs the house because he overhears the movie. Like, that's 3 scenes that do the same thing. Why are we doing that? Like, so that's definitely why the middle section drags, but it also drags from the mother's side as well. I think we just got multiple scenes of her begging people to help her get home. We did that. There's 3 different people she begs. Like, none of those scenes say anything different to the previous one. So this is why I don't know. There's quite a lot of flab in the middle, which is a shame.
I think it would have been easier if just the whole town didn't have any phone lines. Because it does, those scenes also draw attention to the fact that, but I suppose it's a different age, isn't it? Maybe it almost needs a line of, we don't have our address book, but you are sat there going, you phone the operator and someone is still in the town. Like, when have you ever known everyone in your town to leave for Christmas? So that's another reason to almost not have those scenes, because it draws attention to like to slight like logic flaws.
Yeah, agreed. Quick question for you, not so much on the structure, just a small note that I just remembered and I want to ask: the shaving scene, does it deserve to be as iconic as it is? It's funny-ish. Is it that, like, when the aftershave thing, when he slaps it on and he cries out? And they do that twice too, by the way, for no reason. The second time I really was like, we just did this joke. It's not even slightly different. What are we doing?
No, I think it is a funny idea. And maybe we're just so used to it, but like the naivety of a child. Maybe.
Yeah,
I mean, so. But also, is it a bit weird because he doesn't shave, does he?
No. He's just literally cleaning himself. He's showered or bathed. He's combing his hair, and then he like applies deodorant, and then he just applies aftershave, which is very funny.
Because isn't that when aftershave stings the most? When you've literally just shaved, and isn't it because you've?
Yeah, but that's a good point. I assume that I never put it on as a child before I needed to shave, but I assume it would because kids have sensitive skin, don't they? So I guess it would probably still sting a bit if you were a kid. I think.
Yeah.
But you're right.
Yeah, I suppose sometimes
you're exactly
like,
right.
Immediately after a wash, it can sting a bit, can't it?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
I don't think it is an iconic scene. I think it's just an iconic image.
Yeah.
And I think in a way, the hands on the face, which I think also happens at other points as well, is the iconic image, as opposed to specifically the. Then again, when they did that spoof, was it him or someone else? Like,
no, he did it.
They recreated it all recently. Didn't they?
Yeah. He did an advert for something where he recreated the sequence of him waking up and discovering his family was gone, and it ends with him slapping on the aftershave and screaming. Yeah. I can't remember what it was an advert for. It was for Google Home. It was for Google Home, because obviously the idea is that he wouldn't have to deal with the criminals, because Google Home means you can turn the lights off and on, you know, from with your voice and with your phone and stuff. Like that was, I think, what it was to do with. But yeah, he's revisited it a couple of times in various ways. There was a web series where he played an adult version of Kevin McAllister that was all traumatized from his childhood. That was like a fun web series that someone did. Like, you know, so he's come back to the role a few times through various reasons. None of them obviously official, but it's kind of funny. You know, I'm kind of on board with that. I'm really sad and depressed that at some point in the next few years we're going to get a Home Alone 5, 6, whatever we're on, where Kevin's the dad and he leaves his child at home alone. That, you know, and Macaulay comes back for that. And I'll be honest with you, dear listeners, I desperately do not want that movie.
Well, that is someone speaking from the sweet naivete of not watching Home Sweet Home Alone and not realising that that'll probably still be better than what we got there.
Oh yeah, no, I've never seen that one.
It's bad. So I think it would be 7 actually. I think there are 5. I think there's Home Alone, Home Alone 2, Lost in New York, Home Alone 3, Home Alone 4.
Because 4 onwards were straight to DVD, right?
Yeah, Home Alone 5, The Holiday Heist, and then Home Sweet Home Alone, and then so any further would be a 7th, I think.
Very quickly, because I've just spotted it in my notes, so I do want to bring it up. Joe Pesci delivers one of the greatest line deliveries of the man's career, and it's, I think we're getting scammed by a kindergartner. Yeah. The way he delivers that line, and I could not ever do it even an iota of justice, is fucking incredible.
My ears are, as regular listeners may know, every 6 months or so my ears get fairly blocked. So I was watching this with subtitles, and it literally spells out kindergartner, which made it even funnier.
That's so much better. I just remembered something else from the Google Home video. He sits down, because one of the things that makes me sad in this movie is he doesn't get to eat his dinner. He makes it, and then they show up, so he has to just leave his dinner. In the Google Home one, he sits down and then he uses Google Home to solve the problem so he can continue to eat the food. Which is pretty funny.
That's a really good detail.
Yeah. Very quick, I love this joke very much. I like when he says to Santa that he wants his family back, and if Santa has time, maybe Uncle Frank.
Yeah, that's nice.
Good joke.
Good gag.
Let's see if I've got any other notes. I've got a couple here. Let's see if any of these we've not already covered. Sorry. It will never not be funny to me that after all the trouble the mother went to, the rest of the family show up about 1 minute and 20 seconds after she gets home. The movie does not make a big enough point of that, and that is fucking hilarious.
And it's really nicely set up as well. It's just, we took the Friday one you didn't want to wait for. Because obviously she's had such a horrendous journey. Yeah.
And the idea that going with them and just being relaxed about it would have got her home about a minute later. In screen time, it's 1 minute and 20 seconds. Someone worked it out. I saw it at the Triv. Yeah.
Such a good, that end sequence, because we didn't say about this when we talked about The Neighbour. That resolution that he did reach out to his son is so lovely. Yeah, you do watch it though. I think you are distracted by the fact that the family have immediately left Kevin alone again.
Yes,
but it's a really sweet moment in terms of that storyline.
Yeah, it's delightful to know that happens for sure. I also like that. So Kevin wishes for his family to come back. Cause we're continuing that thing of, Kevin thinks that it's because he wished them away. The idea that he wakes up on Christmas morning hoping they're back because that's what he wanted for Christmas. That's what he wanted from Santa. And actually, I love that thing as well of I know you're not the real Santa. I know I'm old enough to know how it works. You work for him, with brilliant idea as well. Delightful. Yeah. Just that naivety of a child, but also like the intelligence of a kid who's smart enough to have done the things Kevin has done in this movie. Like setting up various traps, but also like even setting up the mannequins. Like, I couldn't set up mannequins to be operated like puppets. That's a clever kid. That's a smart kid.
No, that in many ways, that's probably the smartest thing. That's smarter than all the traps at the end in many ways.
Yeah, I would agree. So, like, it makes sense that he's smart enough to have figured out this guy obviously couldn't possibly be Santa, but he's still naive enough and a child enough to go like, well, you work for him. So that one of the things that's sweet about that last scene is he wakes up on Christmas morning, runs downstairs and is like, Mum, Dad, even Buzz, like, expecting them to potentially be there because what he wanted for Christmas was his family, not his presents. And then for them to show up on Christmas Day, it's nice. It's very nicely, it comes together nicely. And then the family stuff with that, and they do it right as well. They don't just do a quick shot. Marley hugging his granddaughter is like, they really like linger on that shot. It's delightful, really well done. The music though, that's the other thing I should say as well. I reckon this movie is about half as good if you take the music out. The music is so fucking good in this movie, and I know it's John Williams, right? And I know that's like you've hired one of the greatest composers of all time. Of course, the music's amazing, but I think this is a disproportionate example of how much music improves a movie. The music brings so much of the tone and the heart and the Christmassy feels to this movie. We talked earlier about how Catherine O'Hara's performance really improves your impression of that character arc, even though it's a little underwritten. Well, the music improves almost all of the emotions of this movie. When he has the scene in the church and you've got the choir mixed with it, when we're getting dramatic and he's building his traps, the music is building to it in this beautiful way. Like, when we have those emotional moments at the end of the movie, the music is selling those too. Like, the music in this movie is exactly what it needs to be in every single scene, and it's glorious. It's so well done. Not that anyone needed to be told this, but it turns out John Williams is a genius. Who knew?
Turns out he knows what he's doing.
Who knew?
Go far.
Who knew that John Williams knew what he was doing?
It does all come together beautifully. Even like that very last moment of Buzz yelling, "What did you do to my room?"
Yes.
It's like someone sat down and basically went through the script and went, "What are the questions?" And like at the end went, "Okay, well, the house is still in a fair bit of disarray. What are the questions people would have? Oh, what's going on with Buzz's room?" I mean, you could maybe argue that he would have tidied up some of it. I'd like to think there's not still a massive fucking spike in the stairs. I imagine the tar's quite hard to get rid of.
Yeah, I think he's probably cleaned up most of the stuff with Mate, because Buzz's shelves he broke, like they all smashed, right? Yeah. So I think he's probably cleaned up most of the traps, because obviously the parents go like, "Oh, how was your?" How was it? He's like, "Oh, uneventful," wink at the camera. Like, he doesn't use the word uneventful, but like the whole premise is that like, did anything exciting happen while we were gone? And he's like, "No," even though we all know he caught 2 criminals or whatever, which by the way, we haven't talked about, but the moment they get caught is so satisfying. The whole payoff to the wet bandits thing. Oh, great. Now we know every house you've burgled is so good.
So good.
Such a good reveal. I love that so much.
And also the cleverness of them getting arrested for robbing that house, not robbing the McAllisters. It's so thought through, the logistics of this movie.
100%. So that's all really fun. But yeah, I agree. I assume he cleaned up, to maintain that lie, he must have cleaned up most of the evidence of his... How did Harry describe it the night before? The House of Horrors? So yeah. 2 very small notes before we move on to Triv from me, and then we could do overall thoughts, I guess, but then Triv. I hate the scene where Kevin looks longingly through a window at another family. I hate it. It's pointless. Not even John Williams' music can save it. It's pointless. It's saying something we've already seen. It's trite. It's another example of a second act scene that's telling us something we already know. I don't know why it's in the finished movie. It's dreadful in every way. I don't know what happened. It's like the worst scene in the movie. I genuinely don't know why it's there. When that scene came up, I literally rolled my eyes. Like, I don't think I could have rolled my eyes any harder. Like, I feel like they were going to go back up into my head and then like out the top. Like, no, unacceptable. Just I don't know who commissioned that scene, who wrote that scene, who made that scene happen, but you fucked up. It's just so pointless in the grand scheme of this script. And again, even then, super trite. Just someone longingly looking through a window at the thing they want. Come on now. Yeah. They've been doing that in movies for a long, long time. That was cliche long before this movie did it. The other thing that I have...
Totally.
I don't know if we'll call this a new section. Dan has a tiny, tiny script note. The tiniest of script notes possible. I hate... There's a line of dialogue where Marley says, there's a lot of things going around about me, but none of it's true. I hate that line. The implication there is that adults are saying it too. And that he's heard it because of that. And that has an implication I don't like. What I would have preferred, is I've heard some of the things kids say about me, but none of it's true. That makes that line infinitely better for me.
For sure.
It's a small note, makes almost no difference to the movie. Maybe this segment should be called "Dan makes the movie 0.0000001% better."
No, I think the section should be called "Dan makes the movie better for him."
Yeah. Yeah, and it's cut that one scene and fix that line of dialogue. I hate it. I hate both. So yeah. Anyway, overall thoughts, Chris. What are you thinking? We're just recommending, right? Good fun time, mostly.
We're recommending. I think it's good fun. I think the movie works best when it's a cartoon, but equally, I respect the decision to put more heart into it, and I think there are moments of that which work well. With, in particular, the neighbor character. The scene where he visits Santa, and this poor Santa is like, "Jeez, I don't know what to do here." I think it works better as a child. And all the stuff we'd said about early up top when we recommend, I stand by. But I think what I have learnt over the course of the podcast is that it really is different tones smashing against each other, and I presume we're about to get more of an insight into why that might be in the Triv section. So yeah, that was fucking Jerry Springer-esque levels of summing up. That was quite, I don't mean to toot my own horn, Dan, but
no, you nailed it.
Top that as a final fucking thought.
No, I'm not gonna. I'm actually just gonna move us straight into the Triv. That is you did it. You nailed it. Perfect. So let's just enjoy that we did it succinctly for once and move straight on. So it's time, Chris.
There.
Say the thing.
Let's triv it up.
We're going to give you some trivia. Very quickly, actually, before we get into that full the little bit of tiny trivia, I just want to shout out the name of the actor that played Santa, because I thought he did a really good job for such a small role. He brings a lot of weird heart to a strange role, because you sort of feel his, like, I'm just a guy smoking a cigarette, does a job, but also like, oh, my heart aches for this kid. And his name is Ken Hudson Campbell. Just wanted to shout him out, because we talked about many of the performers in this movie, and I feel like he brings a lot to it. Yeah, it's a small role, but he kills it. Good work, buddy. Or if you're listening, he's definitely not. Anyway, right, let's talk about this movie. So, this movie kind of came about because of Uncle Buck. Now, for those who don't know, 1989's Uncle Buck starred John Candy, also a John Hughes movie, I think directed as well as written, Uncle Buck, and had the first on-screen role, I believe, for Macaulay Culkin. And in it, there's a really particularly famous scene, I believe, at like the breakfast table, where Macaulay Culkin's young character interrogates John Candy's Uncle Buck character about his life choices, and it's like a very iconic scene, delightful scene, and it really showed what Macaulay Culkin could do. He doesn't have a huge role in that movie. He's in the movie a lot, but like he's not the focal kid of the kids in that movie, if that makes sense. So he gets funny lines, but he's not often the center. So John Hughes was very inspired by Macaulay and really impressed with him, and decided to start writing a movie that he could star in after filming that scene specifically. And famously, Hughes would put together scripts in like a weekend, like 4 days, and he'd be like, here's my new script. I locked myself in a basement for a weekend, and now I've got one. So Home Alone was very much one of those. So yeah, he thought that was he was really pleased with it. But obviously, he produced more scripts than he could ever direct, and he was very prolific, and he would often farm them out to other people. And actually, Chris Columbus, who had worked as a writer several times, but really wanted to get into directing, and had already directed 1 or 2 features, but not had a huge amount of success, had mixed results, actually. Some of his films had kind of flopped. But he'd written Gremlins because he loves Christmas. And John Hughes knew this. John Hughes knew this so much that when he was looking for someone to direct National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation in 1989, while he was making Uncle Buck, I presume, he gave Chris Columbus the job. But even before cameras could roll, Columbus came to the realization he simply could not work with Chevy Chase. Now, stop me if you've heard this one before, listeners. Chevy Chase, difficult to work with. Chris Columbus was too green for Chevy Chase. Yeah, I know, right? Shocking. You know, when you hear something from enough people, it might just be true. I don't know how many various and talented people across the years have complained. I'm just going to reposition myself slightly, 1 second. Have complained about Chevy Chase and working with him, but yeah, Chris Columbus amongst them. So even though he desperately needed the job at that point in his career, his last movie had bombed, Columbus decided to quit the project, and he was genuinely worried that was the end of his directing career. But then John Hughes sent him the script for another Christmas movie, and he thought it was one of the best he'd ever read. So, a few things about this script. First of all, the script went through several rewrites, according to Columbus. The original version lent more into the slapstick, and he insisted on giving it a bit more heart, making a bit more Christmas spirit. Again, I'm paraphrasing. I should have written down the actual exact quote, but this is what I've taken from what he said. Hughes didn't particularly like being rewritten, so then worked on the script a bit as well, and it went back and forth for a long time. Particularly, Hughes was obsessed, absolutely obsessed, with the believability of the family leaving. He really wanted to, according to, this is a Chris Columbus quote, John really filled in every possible logic hole, and the audience always bought it. Yeah, he goes to a lot of trouble, and that shows. So although the part was written specifically for Macaulay by Hughes, Chris Columbus, obviously not wanting to seem like a green director that was just going to be pushed around by his boss, decided to do some, according to Chris Columbus in the DVD commentary, decided to do some auditions anyway, so just in case. But after auditioning tons of other young actors, Macaulay Culkin was obviously the best choice for the role, and Hughes had been right all along, so Macaulay Culkin landed that role. The role of Uncle Frank was actually written with Kelsey Grammer in mind. Now, it's unclear why that didn't work out, but we will come back to this, because there's an early version of the script where Uncle Frank is a very different character, and I think that suits Kelsey Grammer more, so we'll come back to that. For the role of Buzz, other people that auditioned were Keanu Reeves and River Phoenix.
Wow.
Fascinating choices. Didn't work out for whatever reason. I think the actor we got is fine. Don't Google him. But the actor we got it does a good job. Don't Google him. But yeah, he does a good job as Buzz. Perfect little sort of 90s, 80s, 90s John Hughesy bully character. So perfect. Other actors. Now this is okay. We've done this for a long time, right? We're like 104 episodes into Rewind Reviews, Chris. I have never seen such an extensive list of possible actors for 2 such small roles. And I say for small roles, these obviously are integral to the movie, but in the grand scheme of the movie, they're small roles, right? This is for Mr. and Mrs. McAllister, right? Now, obviously, Mrs. McAllister is a bigger role of the 2, but it is insane to me how many names were considered and how many people auditioned. I'm going to read these lists out, Chris, but honestly, I think this is just every working actor in Hollywood at the time. I honestly can't think of anyone they've missed. So I'm going to read these as quickly as I can, because otherwise this will take too long. So this is for Mr. McAllister, Pete McAllister. Okay. Tim Allen, Michael Keaton, Bryan Cranston, Ted Danson, Richard Gere, John Lithgow, Christopher Reeves, Michael Douglas, Kevin Costner, Martin Sheen, Dan Aykroyd, John Travolta, Nathan Lane, Bill Murray, John Belushi, Harrison Ford, Tom Hanks, Sean Penn, Mel Gibson, Sylvester Stallone, Rick Moranis, Dennis Quaid, Jack Nicholson, John Goodman, Robin Williams, Steve Martin, Alan Thicke, Bruce Willis, Tony Danza, John Ritter, Ed O'Neill, Jeff Daniels, Jeff Goldblum, Sam Neill, and Arnold Schwarzenegger.
You know what? Because there's a lot of stuff there which is mind-blowing, which I'll let you pull some highlights out. But you know what continuously blows my mind
Schwarzenegger?
on this podcast, and I don't think we've ever talked about it before. How many times Bryan Cranston has been considered for roles that are, in my view, roles way before he became known.
Yes.
Like, Bryan Cranston was slogging for a number of years.
Yes, he was.
Like, do you know what I mean? I
100%.
view Bryan Cranston really coming into the public eye in Malcolm in the Middle, which is much, much later than this.
Like
maybe
9
I'm
years
naive.
No, you're exactly.
Work.
No, he was a working actor doing bit parts where he could for a long, long time. 100%. Mm-hmm. No, he grinded before he had success. 100%. I mean, look, for me, the one that always strikes me is Arnold Schwarzenegger. We've done a million of these, and Arnold Schwarzenegger's name comes up repeatedly for, characters that would just be described as normal man. And I'm sorry, Arnold, you can't pull off normal guy. You're a giant, humongous man with an unusual accent. That's just the reality of it. If Arnold Schwarzenegger was just playing... If memory serves,
that was pretty much the conclusion of the Jingle All the Way episode, that Arnold can't play normal man.
Yeah, and look, everyone has their limits. When you're physically that big... I mean, the accent you could probably work with. That's not the end of the world, although he's never really deviated from that accent. He's never really tried to do a different one. But, like, you can work with the accent if the accent's the only issue. But it's the accent combined with the bodybuilder physique and the height that just make him impossible. Like, he could never... Like, I know they've made him... I'm sure he's played spies, but this cannot be a spy. This is a giant man. He stands out in every room he walks into. It's the same reason Dave Bautista has recently cited for losing some of his muscle mass. He's still a huge guy and in very good shape. Obviously, it's Dave Bautista, but he's definitely slimmed down, and the reason he's done it is because he realised that sometimes he stands out in scenes he's not supposed to be standing out in. The thing about an actor is learning when to not stand out, and Pete McAllister is not a standout kind of character. He should be very much just the dad of this family. You shouldn't be going... Why is this family rich because if he's a famous bodybuilder? Like, what? You'd have so many more questions. Anyway, the rest of the list is just like every actor working at the time. I think it would have been an absolute waste of some of these, comedic guys like your Bill Murrays. I think we got the right casting for the character. I really like John Hurd, who plays Peter McAllister. I think he does a good job being kind of just like a normal man, which is really what this role needs.
I'd honestly go as far to say this is a perfectly cast movie. Like, I think we got the right actor for every role.
100%. Here's the giant list of people for Kate McAllister. So very quickly, again, every female actor from the day, it seems. Sigourney Weaver, Diane Keaton, Holly Hunter, Jodie Foster, Glenn Close, Gina Davis, Jamie Lee Curtis, Stockard Channing, Carrie Fisher, Madonna. I don't know why Madonna was considered, but there you go. Daryl Hannah, Kelly McGinnis, Leah Thompson, Linda Hamilton, Helen Hunt, Laura Dern, Jane Seymour, Angelica Houston, Sharon Stone, Michelle Pfeiffer, Jessica Lange, Bette Midler, Meg Ryan, Linda Carter, Kim Cattrall, Gates McFadden, Ali Sheedy, and Mary Steenburgen. I like a lot of those. There's a handful of my favourite actresses, full stop, are in this list. It's Catherine O'Hara. Of course it is. It shouldn't be any of these women. And they're all amazing. But, like, yeah. Who doesn't love Ali Sheedy or Gina Davis or, you know what I mean? Like, that is a who's who. I mean, God. Linda Hamilton. Leah Thompson is in this list. Like, this is an amazing, amazing list. Of very, very talented women. But, yeah, that's the right lady got the role, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, Jessica Lange. Jesus, Jessica Lange. What a legend. Anyway. So, yeah.
Imagine if it had been Jessica Lange and Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Jesus Christ.
It's a very different movie.
Yeah, it is. It's a very different movie. So in terms of the other cast members as well, there were some other names thrown around. Not as many, but... So for the role of Harry, Dudley Moore, Phil Collins. Phil Collins breaks my brain every time I see it on this list. Gilbert Gottfried, Kevin Pollak, John Lovitz, Danny DeVito playing Harry.
Sorry, no, we need to go back. Was Phil Collins acting?
Yes, he did
the
a
early
few.
90s?
Yeah, he did a few roles, I think, at this time.
Okay, fair enough.
I don't think he did much, but yeah. Danny DeVito, Rowan Atkinson, Bob Hoskins, and Jeremy Irons. I mean, look, there's some people that would have been good. I mean, Joe Pesci's amazing, right? And Joe Pesci is like one of the stars of this like movie in terms of like he's one of the best things about it. I wouldn't have cast it any other way, but you'd probably been pretty good with you'd have been in safe hands with a Bob Hoskins or a Danny DeVito, to be honest. Maybe not as good, but they're very capable, talented actors. Yeah, Phil Collins is an odd choice.
Yeah,
we've watched a movie.
I'd like to have seen it, but again, perfectly cast movie.
We've watched a movie with Phil Collins as an actor on this podcast. Yeah.
What was that?
He was in Hook.
Who did he play in Hook?
He plays the police officer that turns up at the beginning of the movie.
Oh yeah, I think I remember us having the discussion of watching it going, was that Phil Collins?
Yeah. According to his IMDb, he did 102 movies, but that might just include like when he's done music for movies and stuff. I'd have to look into that more, but yeah. So Phil Collins was an option. I think we got the right actor. Actually, the only other actor's name that really got seriously considered was Al Pacino. They offered Al Pacino pretty much any role he wanted. They actually said he could be Harry or Peter McAllister, but he turned down both due to scheduling conflicts. And in the end, Chris Columbus cast his preferred choice of Joe Pesci because he was, one of his heroes. He didn't think he would do it because he didn't think he'd take such a comedic leaning role, but obviously he did, and the rest is history. So that's good stuff. Yeah. In terms of Marv, there were only two other names that I can see that were seriously considered before they landed on Daniel Stern. And it was actually kind of written with Daniel Stern in mind as well, I'm told. But the other two names were, and I think you'll be interested in this because these are two actors you're very fond of, Chris. Christopher Lloyd and Michael Richards.
And Michael who, sorry?
Michael Richards.
Oh, nice. Yeah. I mean, either of them would have been great. Yeah.
Yeah. Obviously, Daniel Stern is a genius in this movie, but yeah, those are the other two names that were considered.
Christopher Lloyd feels too old, but I don't know if that's just because of what we got and we just think of the character as younger because of Daniel Stern, but yeah.
Yes.
That's great.
Yeah. Michael Richards is the one that I went, that could have been a fun choice. I still prefer. I don't think I would be too fussed about seeing a version of this movie with where in an alternate reality where Michael Richards did it. But if I existed in that reality, I don't think the movie would be significantly worse for it. Is that a fair thing to say? Happy with what we got. Yeah, don't think I would have minded Michael Richards. Christopher Lloyd, I agree, maybe not quite right for it, but he'd have probably found a different angle and made it funny in his own way. Different, but good also. So after securing Culkin, Pesci, and Stern, Columbus felt confident enough to approach actors and actresses he really, really respected and wanted. So he actually then approached Catherine O'Hara after seeing her work in Second City, and John... is it John Haggard? I always forget the guy's name. John Hurd. Sorry, John Hurd. To be in the movie, and that confidence carried through into the sequel. He just kept contacting people whose work he loved. That's how Tim Curry ends up in Home Alone 2, because Columbus was just like, hey, I can just reach out to these people and see, right? There's nothing to stop me. I've already gotten some big names in the first movie. Very interesting one here as well is a young Chris Farley, who we talked about an awful lot in our Cable Guy review, auditioned to be the Santa Claus guy. He didn't get the role, but later that year he would get cast as a junior cast member on SNL, so it worked out for him.
That discussion led me to sort of deep dive Chris Farley a little bit, and the Adam Sandler tribute song to him is fucking beautiful, man. Yeah.
Chris Farley, a bit of a unsung hero these days. I think he often gets forgotten about because he died so young. I don't think he ever really hit his prime. I don't ever think he really made his masterpiece, so to speak. You know, the movie that he the movie or show that would define him. But he was clearly very talented, and it was just waiting for that moment of lineup where the perfect script hits his desk and he does it. And in the end, we got a bunch of movies that maybe were below his skill set. You know, Beverly Hills Ninja is not an amazing script. He's brilliant in it, but it's not an amazing script. So yeah, Chris Farley is definitely another case of taking too soon. But yeah, it's interesting to think he could have played the Santa in this. Prior to being very famous. Chris Columbus envisioned a scene in which the furnace comes to life, gets on all fours, and actually chases Kevin up the stairs. But the scene would have cost over $1 million. So it was trimmed to the furnace simply lighting up in a spooky way and groaning his name, which I prefer, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, definitely.
That's an example of less is more.
Absolutely.
The movie was initially a Warner Brothers production. When they were making the movie, the whole plan was that they kept the budget to around $10 million. That was the scheme. We're we'll make this movie, but you keep the budget below $10 million. Once they started doing pre-production, though, it became quite clear that the movie could not be made without significant changes under $14.7 million. Now, if you're thinking, God, that's a third more. That sounds like a lot. $4.7 million more is obviously, by any objective standard, a lot of money. But in the world of Hollywood, $4 million, or $5 million is just shy of, is actually not... You know, when certain movies at this time were being commissioned for 40, 50, up to upwards of $100 million, an extra $4 million doesn't actually seem like a huge ask in the context of the environment. But they ummed and ahed, Warner Brothers, and Columbus and co. started to get suspicious that they weren't going to give them the money they wanted. So something very sneaky happened. A movie was not allowed to be pitched or read by an executive from another studio until the first studio had officially chosen to put it in turnaround or pass on it. So they were in pre-production. They had offices set up in an abandoned school. They're planning this movie. They're starting to look at building sets. They've obviously cast a bunch of people and made agreements with people like Daniel Stern and Macaulay Culkin and Joe Pesci. And we're ready to go. But it's looking like it's going to be more expensive. Warner Brothers rumming and ahhing. And unbeknownst to Warner Brothers, seeing the writing on the wall, Chris Columbus starts meeting with people from Fox. And he, casually mentions the premise of the movie. And they're not allowed to read the script. But some idiot left a script lying around after the meeting for them to pick up and read. And there was immediate excitement from the Fox executives. I think I've got some names here, actually. One second. So, Chris Columbus secretly met with 20th Century Fox studio executive Tom Jacobson and studio head Tim Roth, who loved the story and actually said they would immediately approve the movie on that budget. But obviously nothing could happen until Warner Brothers rejected the movie. Simultaneous to this, the lack of money was causing another problem for one Daniel Stern. So the movie's budget had ballooned from 10 million to 14.7, but that had also led to the movie's shoot schedule being increased from 6 weeks to 8. And Daniel Stern felt if he was going to do 2 more weeks of work, he should be paid a little bit more money, which I think is a completely reasonable thing to point out. But of course, they couldn't squeeze more money out of Warner's at the time. So Daniel Stern, being unable to get more money for 2 more weeks of work, declined and dropped out of the movie. So at the recommendation of the studio, Warner Brothers, who was still the studio, they hired and cast a guy called Daniel Roebuck as Marv. And he was working for a lower price than Stern, so this made Warner Brothers happy. But this was still not solving the problem of the 4.7 million. So what happens is, Warner Brothers finally go, we'll give you 13.5. That's the most we can do. But even that would have caused significant cuts to the movie and changes to the movie. So Columbus, knowing he had the Fox safety net, Fox had already gone, you only need 15 million? Yeah, we'll absolutely give you 15 million to make this movie. Chris Columbus declines the 13.5 million offer. And the Warner Brothers guys show up at the offices, going from office to office, telling everyone the movie is shut down. Little did they know that executive producer Scott M. Roosevelt would then go into each room immediately after the Warner executive left to tell the people in question not to stop working, that they had been picked up by Fox. So literally, the Warner Brothers guys going into each department are, continuity casting and going, shut it down, and leaving. And then immediately after, a producer's going, ignore him. He doesn't know what's happening. So Warner Brothers, isn't this insane? Warner Brothers then shut the movie down, and Fox jumps straight in and give them something just shy, I believe, of $18 million. I think the number is 17.7, but we'll call it 18 million, which is more than they wanted by quite some way. This allows them to go back to Daniel Stern with more money for his extra weeks of work. And possibly everyone. So then we have the problem of Roebuck, the other Daniel, who had been cast in the movie and was preparing to do the movie. The producers sat him down, and after days of meetings, he says they were kind of cold towards him, but I think that's understandable. He was forced on them by the studio. It's not his fault. It's not their fault. It's a bad situation for everyone, right? But they cited issues with his chemistry with Joe Pesci as they were doing screen tests. But once they had the Fox budget, they knew they could rehire Stern. And actually, Roebuck did end up getting a bit of a hefty paycheck for his troubles. And he was able to put a down payment on a house with the money he received for not working on this project. But apparently, it's not a complete disaster for him, but apparently he did take the rejection quite hard, which is understandable, and was a bit bitter for a while about his experience almost working on this movie. And seeing that it became a big hit afterwards probably didn't help. You know what I mean? So I get that. I totally get that. But from from Chris Columbus's perspective, he wanted 14.7. He's now getting 18 million and a much more excited studio behind the movie. Now, for those wondering how this movie ended up on Disney Plus, of course, Fox would later be gobbled up by Disney in March of 2019, which is why the first 3 Home Alone movies are now available on Disney Plus. So that is.
Are they not all available then?
I don't believe the ones after the first 3 are fully Fox. I think they were co-productions to make them happen on a budget for DVD. So I don't believe any past the 3rd one are.
Right. Well, apart from obviously Home Sweet Home Alone, which was made by Disney.
Yes, of course. Yeah, absolutely. So that's how it got started. I'll run through the rest of the trivia. That's the main bulk of the trivia, I think. There's still a fair bit. Oh, damn, there's a lot of trivia. Sorry, guys. I'll speed up a bit here because this is. But isn't that story though? When I read that, I was like, "That's insane."
Yeah, that's mad. The idea of like him going in and then the Fox guy going in immediately after is just farcical, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like something from a like a workplace comedy. Like it just doesn't feel like the kind of thing that would happen in real life, but it did. So a lot of people already know this, and actually, I will say thank you to both the to a couple of different sources for this, but particularly the Movies That Made Us episode. Not all of the information in this is from that, but a big chunk of it was able to be verified. So for me, usually the journey of doing the trivia for a movie with a complicated backstory like this is reading through the IMDb trivia, pulling out the stuff I'm interested in looking into more, and then doing independent research. But what was really good about this was I got all this stuff from IMDb, started looking through what some of it was real or not. Then I watched the Movies That Made Us episode, and a lot of these people verified these stories in their own words, which meant I was able to go, well, that definitely happened then, or at least according to the people involved, that's what then happened, because I can, and that's like, it was a very quick source to get it from the horse's mouth, so to speak. So I want to thank the people at Movies That Made Us for making, it still took 3 or 4 hours to put all this together, but like, that made it a lot easier. So it's a wonderful episode. People should just check it out if you're interested. I mean, although a lot of the information you now know if you're listening to this podcast, but it's still a great episode of the Movies That Made Us. Maybe watch Movies That Made Us about other movies. It's a really good show. Anyway, if you're interested in what I'm doing right now, talking about the history of this movie, you'd probably enjoy that. So yeah. Anyway, the exterior of the McAllister residence was of course filmed in front of a very famous house. Now in the outskirts of Chicago. It recently sold, I think, for like $5 million. It was on the market for $5 million earlier this year, which is crazy. But basically, they couldn't film inside it. That wasn't very practical. So they'd already set up their offices in a big abandoned school. So then they just decided to use it, because there were no sound stages in Chicago, as sound stages. So the gymnasium, the pool, they were all just built sets inside of, and the whole thing was shot inside of an abandoned school. Really cool. The final sequence when the house is filling with water and he comes up the stairs, they deliberately built that set into the pool, because the rule of thumb when you're filming with water is it will get everywhere, it will leak, your electronics are in trouble. But of course, if you can build it into the base of a pool that's designed to hold water and drain water, then you don't have that problem. So, solved a lot of problems. Really neat idea. And obviously their offices were in the same school they'd set up. So it was like the script department, the casting department, the editing, all were in this building. Although this does lead to a funny thing. When they finished shooting, all the only people left were post-production, which is basically just editors. And the whole place became very creepy once the majority of the production ended. And the editor has repeatedly said that it was really haunting to walk around an abandoned school to work every day to his office where he was editing the movie. But I love the idea that the movie was primarily shot and edited in the same building. That's really cool.
Yeah, that's wicked.
So yeah, John Candy, obviously, huge star at this point. To help them with their budget before they got the extra money from Fox, had agreed to do the movie as a favour to John Hughes for what's called scale, which is the Screen Actors Guild minimum allowable wage, which means he was paid $414 for his role in this movie. Now, I want to make this point clear. The actor that plays the pizza delivery guy, Danny Warhol, earned more than John Candy.
Wow. That's mad.
Yeah, John Candy was paid for essentially one day of work, and they really took advantage of that. It was a 23-hour day.
What, he was being filmed consistently for 23 hours?
I guess so. The set was just there was an active set for 23 hours. I assume he had breaks. He went to his trailer and what have you. But they didn't stop shooting. The production didn't stop for 23 hours. That's how they had him for essentially 2 days, but one day, if that makes sense. Because they got...
That's mad.
Yeah, 100%. So the character was inspired by a real-life polka king called Lewin, who lived in Pennsylvania, whose polka band really did tour around the world. He filmed his part for a day. Obviously, as we mentioned, it was a 23-hour day, but almost all of his dialogue was improvised. Now, an interesting thing about this is John Hughes famous for using improvisations in his movies. It's a trademark, actually. In fact, the 5 students in The Breakfast Club were told to improvise the reasons they were in detention. And in this movie, all of John Candy's dialogue is improvised. But the reason this was allowed is because John Hughes was on set. They were not permitted to improvise when he was not around. Because he was worried, because they'd been so careful about the script as it had gone back and forth. He was very protective and very clear with Chris Columbus that he was not to change dialogue without clearing it. And therefore, improvisation was very heavily discouraged. There are only a couple of exceptions, which we will come to. But he did visit the set once or twice, and one of the days was when John Candy, his good buddy, showed up, and of course improvisation was suddenly allowed because John Hughes was there to approve it. So yeah, all of John Candy's dialogue, almost all, was completely improvised. Shouldn't be a surprise to anyone who's seen the movie. It's very clearly improvised. Do you have any guesses, Chris, as to the exceptions? There are 3 other lines in the movie that were improvised. Do you know what they might be? Any guesses off the top of your head?
I assume something with Harry and Marv.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so when Marv says, "Why did you take off your shoes?" Sorry, when Harry says, "Why did you take off your shoes?" Marv replies, "Why the hell are you dressed like a chicken?" The "Why the hell are you dressed like a chicken" line was improvised. The other one was from Mr. Young Macaulay Culkin, who apparently improvised the utterly iconic line, "You guys give up, or are you thirsty for more?"
Oh, wow.
I know. What a fucking smart kid, man. What a smart kid. Because that's an absolutely iconic moment in the movie. Completely improvised, apparently.
Yeah.
The other one is a line I don't remember the context for, but apparently at some point Marv says maybe he committed suicide? Question mark? I don't remember what the context of that is. But apparently it's an improvised line.
Is it something to do with where they're confused about where Kevin is, maybe?
Yeah, I don't know.
Something like that.
Yeah, I'd have to double check where that line falls in the movie, but it's one of the listed improvised lines. Macaulay Culkin had a stunt double in this movie, but obviously you can't make a child do stunts, so it was just a very short 30-year-old man, which is fair enough. You wouldn't want a child to be doing stunts, so that makes sense. It's just funny to think about.
Yeah.
Yeah. Joe Pesci deliberately avoided Macaulay Culkin on set because he really wanted Culkin to think he was mean. I think that's delightful.
Oh. Yeah, that's cute. Weirdly cute.
Yeah. Obviously, we talked about this already, but obviously Joe Pesci kept getting he kept getting the scenes kept getting like cut, or they had to do another take because he kept throwing swear words in. Because he kept forgetting that he's filming a family picture. And apparently in the past, when he'd get scripts that didn't directly come from... what's his name? The director he always works with, my brain's died. Very famous. What's happening to my brain? The one all the gangster movies.
You talk about Martin Scorsese?
Yeah, Scorsese. Sorry, thank you. I don't know why that name escaped. If he got a script from anyone that wasn't Scorsese, Joe Pesci famously would just add the word fuck to every other line himself. So what are you doing here? He'll become, what the fuck are you fucking doing here, you fuck? Like, that's how he just said in the past he would do it. And it was really difficult for him to do this movie for that reason, which is why Harry ends up with this sort of like muttly, he's making these like expletives, but like they're noises instead. It's one of my favorite things about the movie. Apparently Chris Columbus's suggestion was that he said fridge instead of fuck, but that didn't quite play. Apparently, though, I've not got it in my truth here, but apparently Marv accidentally slips in a swear that you can just about hear if you're really careful. When he drops his shoe through the cat flap, you can apparently, if you're really listening carefully, you can hear Daniel Stern utter the word shit during that moment, which I think is funny. That made it into the edit.
Yeah, especially if like Joe Pesci was getting all this heat.
Yeah, exactly. Although again, you'd really have to struggle to hear it. It's almost not there. Like there's a reason they got away with it for many years. Everyone on set was apparently amazed at how mature and professional Macaulay Culkin was. Joe Pesci told Entertainment Weekly, "Mac is not like a 9-year-old. He's like an old man already," which I love.
We actually, fairly shockingly, haven't talked much about Macaulay Culkin's performance during this podcast.
No, I mean, I guess we talked about it when we talked about the how good he was in the church scene. But yeah, he's obviously fucking what an incredible talent that boy is. Like he's doing it all in this movie. The emotive stuff, the action stuff, the funny stuff. Like he's incredible. Yeah. You believe this kid is as smart and as annoying as the script.
Yeah, I think, and great comic timing. Like the comic timing of the shaving scene, of the aftershave scene, and all of that stuff is phenomenal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you would believe he was a much more seasoned actor by far. And apparently he was just on set. He just knew his lines, showed up. Like there's a piece of trivia I saw that I couldn't verify, so I took it out. That apparently, like, he would be given more time playing his Nintendo if he like nailed his lines, and that Chris Columbus kind of encouraged that. But I've not found any evidence of that, and in fact, I found evidence of the opposite. I've seen several quotes from Christopher Columbus claiming, he couldn't believe, like particularly he cited the church scene. Culkin just showed up knowing the lines, and just did it first take and did it brilliantly. And he was just blown away by how professional he was. So there might be some truth to it, where maybe one day they were like, come on, if you can, he'd blown a scene once or twice, a few flubbed lines or whatever. Like, if you get it right, you can go play Nintendo. Maybe it's come from that or something. But it doesn't seem to have been a consistent thing. All the reports that I've been able to find with it, Macaulay did a great job. And that's why I always have to double check the trivia, and it takes so long because so much of it turns out to be nonsense. I'm sure I've had some slip through the net where I've repeated them as fact and they've not been, but yeah. Apparently, one of the fun things about this is Joe Pesci and Daniel Stern were both very indifferent about the movie during production. They kind of thought it wasn't going to be a big hit and wasn't really, going to matter. So they just intentionally gave over the top performances to entertain themselves. But, it works so well. So, you know what? That's fine.
Yeah, because to be fair, making it must have felt so disparate.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? For them, they're it's this weird cartoony thing, and it was probably a lot of stunt work. But then for Catherine O'Hara, it's a lot of dramatic stuff. And obviously, their paths literally never cross in the movie, other than, I suppose, the beginning, obviously, with Joe Pesci. But yeah, so it must have seemed so... It doesn't all come together until it all comes together. So right. I can see why making it, potentially everyone was going, what the fuck are we making? Apart from maybe Macaulay Culkin.
Yeah, and apparently the actor that plays Peter McAllister, John Hurd, he apparently later apologized to Columbus because he was convinced he was in a dreadful, dreadful movie, through production, and was not shy about saying it, and only later on apologized, probably around, I think around the time of production for the sequel. That's when he kind of was a bit more oh, I see, because presumably at that point he'd seen the movie and it had been a big hit. So yeah,
I see what we're doing here.
At least he apologized, I think. Yeah, I think that's fair. So the original composer for this movie dropped out really last minute, and they were all joking in their offices at the school. Wouldn't it be great? Should we just get John Williams in? John Williams, yeah, that'd be funny. Let's get the greatest composer of our age to come do the movie. And then, I don't know where anyone got the confidence to do this, but someone just sent him a cut of the movie without music, and he thought it was brilliant and decided to do it for less pay than he usually takes. So
in my head, I like to think Williams didn't even he responded with the music. I know that's probably not how it worked back then, but I just like to think that he just sent it back and was like, "Yeah, here you go."
Yeah, I like that idea too. It's super fun. I think it's one of his best pieces of work, and it's underrated in the John Williams canon, in my opinion. But there you go. I think when people think of John Williams, obviously Star Wars, Indiana Jones, E.T., Superman, but Jaws, but this is so good, this music. So yeah, credit where credit's due. Apparently they had Macaulay Culkin really draw the map that the character uses of all the traps. So those really were drawn by a child. They were drawn by Macaulay.
Again, the thing with that map of the traps is just the speed. Drawn by a child who was able to pull it all together in an hour.
Yeah.
I'm never not going to be confused by that.
That's fair. The pages on the Playboy magazine that Kevin looks through were taped together so that young Macaulay Culkin did not see any nudity. Apparently it was the July 1989 issue. Thank you, trivia person, for that information.
Is there some sort of Playboy database, the equivalent of the movie car database?
Oh my god, I bet there is. I'm not going looking for it, but that's very funny. Yeah, I like the idea that exists. The movies that Kevin watches, obviously, is not a real movie, but footage specifically created. It was called Angels with Filthy Souls. And it's obviously has lots of references to that era of filmmaking, and it's a bit of a play on Angels with Dirty Faces, which is a 1938 movie. Starring James Cagney. This movie originally had more scenes of the family in Paris, but test audiences did not like them, and they took them out to get back to Kevin sooner. The only thing they cut that I'm sad they cut is apparently, how there's another brother they're going to see in Paris? The third brother. So it's Frank, Dad McAllister, whose name I keep forgetting, and then Rob McAllister. Apparently, you can see him in the background when they rush to the desk looking to get tickets and a phone call to get back home because they've just figured out that Kevin has been left out alone. He's in the background holding a sign that says welcome. Apparently, the original scene is that he's waiting for them to get off the plane and like, hey guys, and then they all barge past him to run to the desk to get a phone and flights and like stuff sorted. And it's a shame that was cut because I think that's a funny idea and I don't think it probably would have been very long. The movie probably wouldn't have been hurt by 30 more seconds of that. So I'm sad that got cut. I think the other scenes in France definitely should have been cut. All them sat around in a French apartment looking at a movie, being sad about Kevin not being there, probably was very boring, and I'm glad that wasn't in the movie.
Yeah, the fact that it's his brother though just makes me, because I'm pretty sure it's another brother.
Yes, it is.
In the sequel, and it's like just that sequel thing, Home Alone 2, of like why do everything again? Like there's a scary adult who actually appears to be friendly. It's the brother. Like, you know what I mean?
That's a good question. I always assumed it was the same brother.
It just moved to New York?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, I always assumed it was the same brother. Robin McAllister.
Maybe it is.
Oh, there's a Home Alone wiki, Chris. The younger brother
Maybe
of Peter and Frank McAllister. Appearances. Just Home Alone.
I mean, I think, for anyone thinking, why is Dan jumping to the third movie? We're recording this in November 2024. I think it's clear why Dan doesn't want to see the second movie.
Yeah, I don't want to see the second movie just because, I'm very burnt out on Home Alone after today. Because I did the watching of the movie, the research for this, and this recording all in one day, and my entire day has been Home Alone. And I really the idea of thinking about this movie after this podcast ends ever again is quite a stretch. So anyway, I'll look into that, and maybe we'll talk about it at a future day. Maybe we'll talk about it when we get to Home Alone 2. We'll figure out if it's the same brother or what they've done there.
Yeah.
The picture Kevin finds of Buzz's girlfriend that he then goes like, woof. Chris Columbus thought it would be too cruel to make fun of a real girl like that. So the picture is actually art director Dan Webster's son dressed up. And I think that's definitely better than picking some poor girl and having Macaulay Culkin say woof. But still probably not great.
No, yeah.
Anyway.
Because it's still playing into certain stereotypes, isn't it?
Yep, agreed. Anyway, because it's getting on. We're 2 hours and 20 minutes. Can't believe we've talked about Home Alone this much. The novelization. This is the second podcast in a row where the novelization has given us some extra information, Chris, because this is from the era of everything having a novel. The novelization was written by Todd Strasser, and it gives us a few extra little details. Notably, the name of Buzz's pet tarantula was Axel, and they clarify what Peter's job is, and actually Kate's as well, because obviously for years people have been like, what fucking job did he do to own that big giant house? Is he like a mafia boss? So he's just listed as a successful businessman. So he owns some sort of big company, basically, or is the CEO of some sort of very big company, hence the money they have. And Kate appears to be some sort of fashion designer, which actually explains why the house is filled with mannequins and 2 sewing machines that are seen throughout the movie. So there you go.
Which aren't then used, are they, the sewing machines? I was expecting them to come back. But they didn't.
Yeah, you're right. I don't think he does. No. Huh. Maybe he sews something together at the end, like a fabric for something? I can't remember. No, I think you might be right. Near the start of the movie, Kevin's brother Jeff puts a random toothbrush in his pocket. During the famous aftershave scream scene, Kevin claims he is unable to find his toothbrush. This strongly suggests that Jeff took the wrong toothbrush. He took Kevin's, and that's why Kevin then needs to buy a toothbrush. Good little detail.
That's a good little detail.
Mm-hmm. Catherine O'Hara revealed in 2014 that Macaulay Culkin still calls her mom, which is delightful.
That's very sweet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Obviously, everyone knows this, but just in case you didn't, Kevin's cousin Fuller is, of course, played by Kieran Culkin in his feature film debut. Delightful.
Yep.
Everyone loves that fact. Just thought I'd mention it anyway because I get comments, even though everyone knows that. John Candy shared all of his screen time in this movie with Catherine O'Hara. The two previously worked together at Second City through sort of the late 70s, early 80s. They were good friends. When Candy died, very sadly, on O'Hara's 40th birthday, and she gave a very tearful eulogy at his funeral. We've talked about it before, but John Candy, obviously, gone way too soon. Absolute legend.
Yeah, definitely.
So, Uncle Dickhead, whatever his name was, I've forgotten his name, says that they can't make the plane journey in just 45 minutes. So someone has done the logistics on this, Chris. So the trip from where their house is in Lincoln Avenue to Terminal 3 at the airport where the American Airlines gate is located takes approximately 30 minutes. And because this was more than a decade before 9/11, security was nothing more than a belt-fed X-ray machine for baggage, so people could even get to the departure gates without a boarding pass. So it's very possible, it would have been tight, but definitely possible they could have made the plane. So it doesn't stretch reality. There you go. I'm glad. I know you needed to hear that. This movie is considered a traditional Christmas movie in Poland. It airs on national television every single year and has done since 1990. In 2010, the movie was not scheduled to air, but then had to be broadcast after 90,000 people protested. When it aired in December 2023. It had an audience of 5 million. Still is one of the most popular things to air every Christmas in Poland. I love that fact. Brilliant.
To be fair, I feel like it airs every year over here as well.
Yeah, I think it does too. All right, would you like the 2 batshit facts? This is the stuff I've been saving these two, Chris. You ready for some insanity?
Go on.
There for many years...
Oh, wait. Can I just say, sorry, I've just Googled it. It literally last Christmas aired on Christmas Day in the UK.
There you go. Yeah. It's still a classic, for sure. Although I think if it wasn't scheduled, you wouldn't get 90,000 complaints.
No, but equally, I think it probably also, you not only on TV, you can probably find like outdoor cinemas and stuff, or cinemas rerunning it as well, each year as well.
So there was a legend, Chris, for many years, that Elvis Presley, who died in 1977, I just want to make that, this is a 1990s movie, he died in 1977, the word on the street was that he had a cameo in this movie. Because obviously a lot of people do believe Elvis is still alive, and people who believe that maintained that the heavily bearded man standing in the background of the scene where Mrs. McAllister is shouting at the desk clerk, the scene where she meets John Candy, that man is Elvis. This was asserted for years. He is believed to be the correct age. Elvis would have been 55 at the time. He makes head movements that match Elvis's head movements from concerts, and no record was found for a long time about who that particular actor was. But in 2018, this theory was debunked when an investigative journalist identified the man as Gary Richard Grott, who had passed away from a heart attack in 2016. Grott's family were able to confirm it was him in the movie and revealed that he'd been working regularly as an extra on many Christopher Columbus movies, although Home Alone was the first one that he sort of appeared prominently in. So the theory was debunked. But I do love that it exists.
That's some batshit crazy triv right there, Dan.
Isn't that great? I love that one. And here's the real one. This one hurt my brain, Chris. Because remember we said earlier we were going to put a pin in Uncle Frank. Uncle Frank was originally going to be played by Kelsey Grammer. Uncle Frank...
Yeah, that fits.
In the original script, Chris, was going to be revealed to be the villain. He was going to be revealed
as the man. Doesn't need a villain, does it, Dan?
Well, you tell me how you feel about this reveal. He was going to be revealed as to have hired Marv and Harry to rob from his brother, who he was jealous of, and had orchestrated events so they would leave Kevin at home so Kevin could be murdered by them.
Jesus.
He would be revealed to be responsible for the power cut, and he would have been the one who told Buzz to eat the plain cheese pizza to make Kevin annoyed so that he'd act out and be sent to bed early, separately. Which doesn't make any sense, by the way. I'm glad this was cut. But so the story goes. Now, I had trouble verifying this. I certainly believe there's a version of it where he was revealed to have been hiring Harry and Marv because he was jealous of his brother's wealth or whatever. I found it harder to believe there was ever a version of the script where he was orchestrating all of this stuff, including killing Kevin. But absolutely insane. When you think about the roles, particularly his role on The Simpsons, that Kelsey Grammer ultimately played, Sideshow Bob, it's kind of incredible that we got that there was a version of Sideshow Bob before Sideshow Bob. You know, even down to jealous of a wealthy, successful person who's close to him, the attempted murder of a child that's annoying him. It's very close to that, and Kelsey Grammer would have been a very good choice for that if that was the version of the script we got.
That is mad.
I'm glad that.
I just don't think this movie needs that.
No,
it doesn't. It doesn't need a villain.
No, it has a villain.
Well, you know what I mean, like an overarching villain.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely fine as it is. But it's an amazing piece of trivia. One of my favourites. All right, you'll be glad to hear on the home stretch. Just a bit of box office details here, very quickly.
Oh, could I just say just to say it near to when it was said. Home Alone is available throughout December, 8th, 10th, 12th, 15th, 16th, 21st and 23rd if you want to watch it at the Prince Charles Cinema in London.
There you go. Yes, Prince Charles Cinema always do good stuff at Christmas. They usually also do screenings of Gremlins and Elf. The Gremlins screening I went to a couple of years ago, they actually had, I forget his name, Zach someone, the guy that played Billy Pulitzer came in and did a Q&A and was delightful. And he signed my,
nice.
And it sounds like it's going to sound like a bad euphemism, but he signed my Gizmo.
You are correct. There is 3 screenings of Gremlins over December and about 6 or 7 of Elf by the looks of it.
Yeah. If you're ever in London at Christmas and you want to do a Christmas movie, wonderful way to do it. The Gremlins is usually a 35mm print as well, and it just looks incredible on 35mm. So I recommend anyone who can see it, go see it. Always support the Prince Charles Theatre, very good cinema in London. So box office, just before we wrap up. Home Alone was the number 1 film at the box office for 12 consecutive weeks. So they actually released it ahead of Christmas because they were actually going to release Edward Scissorhands at Christmas, Fox. So they released it on November the 16th, which I just want to point out, Chris, today, the day we are recording this, is November the 15th. We are a day off the anniversary of this movie's 24th year, heading into its 25th. So that's fun. So it ran from November the 16th to February the 1st as the number 1 movie. And it ultimately, on its $18 million budget, returned worldwide $477 million. Excuse me. $477 million. And that's before it went on to video, DVD, the millions of screenings it clearly gets every Christmas across the world, including the fact it airs in Poland every Christmas and it aired on Christmas Day on the BBC last week. This movie might be one of the most successful movies of all time because they spent $18 million on it and it continues to return money to this day. At the time, it went...
That's mad.
I know. At the time, it went into the Guinness Book of World Records as one of the highest box office grosses of a comedy of all time. It surpassed Beverly Hills Cop as the highest grossing comedy at the domestic box office, and itself held that record for nearly 30 years until Deadpool unseated it in 2016. The highest grossing movie of 1990s domestically was Home Alone. Worldwide, it was second, sadly, to Ghost. Ghost was the movie that beat it worldwide, but it was close. And after the major success of this movie and the sequel, Home Alone, Chris Columbus obviously got a lot of options, from his career him being worried about his directing career being done, to him being able to direct Mrs. Doubtfire and a little-known series called Harry Potter. So, that's the end of the normal trivia. But very quickly, Chris, it's time for Cars Exist. Just very quickly, Harry and Marv's van is a 1986 Dodge Ram. Very nice. Cool, we did it. What are we thinking? It's a long time. Sorry that went on for so long, everyone. I didn't realise the triv was that in-depth, but apparently the reason I spent 3 to 4 hours working on it was because I had a lot.
Yeah. I think we go straight down to your choice. I mean, it's been said, we know it, but confirm for the people.
Yeah, we're doing Muppets Christmas Carol, obviously. I'm not even going to do a joke where I'm like, oh, Home Alone 2. No, we're doing Muppets Christmas Carol. I've threatened it for like 3 years. We've had different reasons for not being able to do it at Christmas. Last year because it was sequel season, the year before because we did the Santa Claus trilogy. It's time to do Muppets Christmas Carol, which is one of my favourite Christmas movies of all time. I absolutely love it, and I'm really excited to revisit it. I don't think this is going to be does it still hold up, because I've watched this maybe not every year, but maybe every other year. I feel like every 2 to 3 years I rewatch this at Christmas. It's delightful. I don't think I watched it last Christmas because we just moved to Australia and that was a whole hassle. But I think I saw it the year before, maybe. So yeah, very excited to revisit Muppets Christmas Carol, because I always enjoy this movie. I don't know. I believe you've seen it, but maybe it's not a big childhood memory of yours. Is that fair? I guess we'll cover that.
No, I've never seen it. It's been on in the background whilst I've been at the odd thing, but no, I have never sat down and watched it all the way through and watched it properly.
If memory serves, you've been involved in a production of Christmas Carol, right? Like actual Christmas Carol.
Yeah.
So you're
to the point
you're
where
pretty
I was going to make a joke when
with
you announced this. I was going to when you said your choice, I was going to go another film with a novelisation. Yeah, because I don't know if it's one of the characters that my cousin said when he watched me in A Christmas Carol, he was really confused why there was only one, like, maybe it was Cratchit or something. And then he realised that there are just two in the Muppets version.
Yeah. It's Marley. It's Bob Marley, yeah. Because in the Muppets, right. they give it to Statler and Waldorf, and it's they're Marley and Marley. They're brothers. Instead of it just being one person.
He watched it and was like, why is there only one Marley? And then he realised that Muppets Christmas Carol was perhaps not the reference. Now, the weird thing is, right? So yeah, you're right. I did a production. I mean, maybe we'll talk about it next week because I don't have anything to say about the film. But let's not forget, in that production of Christmas Carol, I was portly gentleman number 2. So I didn't have a big part. Well, I mean, I did, but you know what I mean. Not big in the right sense. One thing I will say is, because I've never really watched the movie, I know it's a huge thing, and I know it's a huge Christmas film and all of that sort of stuff, but I wouldn't necessarily list it first in sort of, if you were to say most popular Christmas movies or iconic Christmas movies. But this is a weird sort of thing to benchmark on, but it is in keeping with what I've been doing for the last 10 minutes. There is only one day in December that Prince Charles Cinema isn't showing Muppets Christmas Carol. So I think that does actually say a lot about its status as a Christmas movie, because that is mad to me. There's a lot of showings of Love Actually as well, but I can't see anything, at least in sort of first glance, that tops the amount of showings that Muppets Christmas Carol is getting. It's a Wonderful Life is up there, but every day.
It's a classic, I think, for good reason. We'll talk about it, but yeah, I think it's a real benchmark, I think, for what a Muppets movie can be, and I think Disney would be smart to maybe come back to this approach of doing a Muppets movie where you just tell a classic story with the Muppets and have one human actor to react to them for funsies. In a big Muppet world, I think there's something very fun about this. And I think it's a very special movie. I think it's a really, really great adaptation that really understands the source material, but is not afraid to go off it when it needs to. But I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. At least, even if you don't care for the movie, and I'm hoping you'll enjoy it, but even if you don't care for the movie, I think hopefully you'll find something in this very approachable adaptation of...
Oh, I'm sure I will. Yeah. And just to put that Prince Charles thing into... Just to put that Prince Charles thing into context, they're only showing Jingle All the Way once. You know?
How many times are they showing Home Alone? Out of curiosity, because we just did Home Alone, obviously.
Yeah, I read the dates, but I didn't count. Well, there's a double feature, which they're doing once, and then the first movie, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 7 times.
So they're showing Muppets Christmas Carol more than Home Alone?
That's the most they're showing anything. It's a Wonderful Life is close, but even It's a Wonderful Life is not every day.
Wow.
So It's a Wonderful Life.
Even I'm surprised by that. Yeah. I mean, look, the people who love it. It's a very people are very passionate about that movie. So yeah, I'm excited to see where this goes. So yeah.
The majority of showings are sing-alongs. But look, the Prince Charles have been showing Christmas movies because the Santa Claus isn't being shown at all. I think what's fascinating about this is. Yes. Prince Charles have been showing Christmas movies for years, decades.
Yep.
So this really is a reflection of what people buy tickets to see consistently.
Yeah.
And clearly the answer to that is The Muppets Christmas Carol.
Well, here's the thing, Chris. If you enjoy the movie, I say next year I make sure I'm back in the UK for Christmas and we go see Muppets Christmas Carol at the Prince Charles and sing along.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, why not, right? And then I'll make you watch Elf, because I know you don't care for Elf.
Also, let's do Elf. How many times?
Oh, yeah, go on.
So Elf is showing... And again, I'm doing days. Oh, no, single performances. So Elf is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times.
Still a lot.
7, sorry. They're showing Elf 7 times.
Still a lot.
They're showing Master and Commander, The Far Side of the World, 1 time.
That must be something. That must be for a different reason.
That's a surprise. Here's a surprising one. The Holiday, they're only showing once.
I
feel like the Holiday stock
doesn't surprise me. That's a very particular audience that like that. And I feel like that audience are already coming to see Love Actually.
Yeah, which is being shown multiple times. And which actually, Dan, and I might still do it, because I looked it up, and just to threaten you, Dan,
go on.
Because I looked it up, and the episode after this, after the Muppets Christmas Carol, is New Year's Eve or New Year's Day that it comes out, because I did realise after picking Home Alone that Richard Curtis has a multi-character, multiple stories movie coming out this year on Netflix in the holidays.
Sure.
I was like, Love Actually probably would have been a better choice, in terms of reasons to do it.
I famously do not care for that movie, and I would love the opportunity to talk about it. So even though I don't care for that movie, I think it's a fascinating movie. I think it's fascinating how many people love that movie, and I think it's really interesting because I think it's quite broken as a film. And I would love to. I've never watched it with a critical eye. I've only ever seen it sort of casually, but yeah. Let's go for it.
Yeah, I'm very tempted. I'm not saying I'm
welcome to do that.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying I definitely will, but I am slightly tempted to, but we'll see.
Yeah, because I think New Year's is still okay to talk about that one, but yeah.
Yeah, which is why I looked at it and thought, let me just see the name. Oh, there you go, That Christmas. So it's animated, I think. But it's a Richard Curtis multi-character Christmas movie coming out.
So, this has been going on for way too long. We've now been talking, Chris, for a grand total of 2 hours and 43 minutes, which I don't think I could have ever anticipated us doing on Home Alone. So, I'm going to end it there. But thank you everyone for listening. It's been delightful. I've had a good old time talking about it. Hope you guys have enjoyed listening. The trivia, obviously, was a big part of why that overran. We were already at like 2 hours when I started the trivia, though. So, we definitely overcooked that one to some degree. But yeah, thanks everyone for listening. We love you. You can get us all the usual places, mail at nothingbutstatic.co.uk. If you want to support us financially, patreon.com/nothingbutstatic. all that good stuff. youtube.com/nothing-but-static-UK. All those places you can support us and like us and review us, and all that interaction helps with the algorithms. Or you can just tell a friend, or just keep listening. That works too. I'm going to hand over to Chris, who makes this stop.
Yeah. And I for those wondering, although it's probably been pretty evident, I haven't. It's not been edited out. I have not coughed that much during this, but yes. I have instead been very sniffly, which is harder to edit out, and I apologise.
Yeah, you've sneezed a couple of times. Well. I'll probably just leave those in, if I'm being honest with you, Chris.
You probably what? Sorry,
I'll probably just leave those in, the sneezes.
Yeah, exactly. So I apologise. But hey, I didn't cough that much.
There you go.
My name's Chris Billingham.
My name's Dan Dillon.
And this review has been rewound. This Christmas thing from Richard Curtis has Brian Cox playing Santa Claus, which is great casting.
Professor Brian Cox, or
no, Succession's Brian Cox.
Good casting.